Meeting of the Charlotte Unified Development Board of Adjustment on Tuesday, March 25th, 2025. My name is Deborah Dryden, and I'm the chair of the board. Would the board members please go around and state their name for the record?
Amy Leahy-Sun.
Hamilton Court.
Thank you. Also present are Solomon Fortune, building administrator, John Kinley, the senior project manager, Crystal Monsegur, our planner, Kamisha Lampley, the clerk to the court, Therese Hegler Gray, senior assistant city attorney and advisor to the planning staff, Nicole Hewitt, assistant city attorney, advisor to the board, and Elizabeth Majors, the Veritex court reporter. Each of today's hearings is a quasi-judicial evidentiary hearing. That means it is like a court hearing. State law sets specific procedures and rules concerning how this board must make its decision. These rules are different from other types of land use decisions like rezoning cases. The board's discretion is limited. The board must base its decision upon competent, relevant, and substantial evidence in the record. A quasi-judicial decision is not a popularity contest. It is a decision constrained by the standards in the ordinance and based on the facts presented. If you will be speaking as a witness, please focus on the facts and ordinance standards, not personal preference or opinion. General witness testimony is limited to facts. For certain topics, this board needs to hear opinion testimony from expert witnesses. These topics include projections about impacts on property values and projections about impacts of increased traffic. Individuals providing expert opinion must be qualified as experts and provide the factual evidence upon which they base their expert opinion. While hearsay evidence is not specifically excluded, it is only given limited weight. Parties with standing have rights to participate fully. Parties may present evidence, call witnesses, and make legal arguments. Parties are limited to the applicant, the city, the individuals who can show they for special damages. Other individuals may provide testimony as witnesses when recognized by the board. Witnesses must swear or affirm their testimony. Any individual wishing to speak as a witness today was required to sign up. If you haven't done so, please do so now. The parties to each case are entitled to an impartial decision maker. A board member may not participate in a hearing if they have a fixed opinion about the matter, a financial interest in the outcome of the matter, or a close familial, business, or associational relationship with an affected person. The parties to each case also have a right for any ex parte communication to be disclosed. Ex parte communication is any about the case outside of the hearing. That may include site visits as well as conversations with parties or the general public. At the start of each case, any potential conflict of interest or ex parte communication should be disclosed by a board member if applicable. These matters may also be raised by any affected party. Today's meeting will follow the order printed on the agenda. The order of the regular agenda will be as follows. All parties who plan to give testimony must be sworn in. A city staff member will present a summary of the case. The board may question the staff member, and then the applicant may question the staff member. The applicant presents their testimony for the case, and any sworn witness provide testimony. The board and city staff may question the applicant and their witnesses. Other parties wishing to speak for or against the case will be given reasonable time to present sworn testimony. The staff and then the applicant will be given an opportunity for rebuttal. After hearing each case, the board will review each case and render a decision. This is usually done in closed deliberation after hearing each case. The chairperson calls for a motion in a second to approve or deny the variance or appeal. In case of an appeal, the chairperson calls for a motion in a second to uphold, modify, or reverse the administrator's decision. The decision will be made by a simple majority vote of the board. However, the board may elect to take up to 30 days to render a decision. You may remain present during the deliberations, or you may call the zoning office after the session to receive the decision of the board. If you wish to receive a written copy of the decision letter, please indicate so on your sheet. All exhibits must remain with the board. If your case is not appealed to Superior Court after 30 days, you may pick them up or they may all be destroyed. Appeal from the board to the Middleburg County Superior Court. You have 30 days from the date of the board's written decision in which to appeal in accordance with NCGS 160D-405D. All right. At this time, I'm going to swear in all our staff that Crystal and Ms. John and, okay. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the evidence you shall give to the board in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you very much. All right, now we're opening the evidentiary hearing for variance number 2025-00001. The property is located at 11422 Gold Pan Road. Before we begin, does any board member have a conflict of interest or potential conflict or ex parte communication they need to disclose? Okay. All right.
Just a quick heads up on, I think maybe what the original agenda that was sent out had on it. It showed a 25-foot rear setback proposed. When we were working on putting together all of our documents and presentations, we realized it needed to be 20 feet instead of 25. So instead of 35 feet down to a 20-foot, 35 feet down to a 25-foot, 10-foot reduction, it's a 35 down to 20 feet, a 15-foot reduction. But everything in the presentation and what you just received should reflect that updated information.
Okay, say it again. So it's not 35 to.
What we originally emailed
okay.
out was a 35 to 25, and what it is 35 to 20.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that clarification.
So this is a variance request to reduce the rear setback from the N1B zoning district in Article 4.3, Table 4-2 of the UDO. Again, the required setback is 35 feet, and they're requesting to reduce it to 20 feet, which is the 15-foot reduction. There is a condition that the variance to reduce the rear setback applies to the proposed addition described herein for this case. And if it's damaged or destroyed by an act of God, they would be able to replace it. But the setback would not apply to any other future additions or redevelopment of the parcel. You'll kind of see why we asked for that condition, and I'll explain a little bit more as we get into the presentation. The property is off of Gold Pan Road, which is off of Plaza Road Extension, not too far away from 485. The house there highlighted in green, and it's got a garage in the front and then a backyard in the back that does rise a little bit. You can kind of see on the aerial there's a little bit of a staircase right here that actually goes up into the upper part of the yard. Here's just a zoning map of the property showing the N1B zoning district. And here's the zoomed in aerial, and you can see that staircase at the back I was talking about. They've got a patio area here, and then the footprint of the home here with the garage facing out towards.
And where do they want to put the extension?
The proposed addition would be in this area here.
Okay, thank you.
Here's the street view of the property. Again, the variance request is to reduce that setback for the rear from 35 feet down to 20 feet. Staff supports the requested variance with the condition that it would only apply to the proposed addition. This is the proposed addition, approximate footprint, and then that's showing where that distance of 20 feet is at that nearest corner because of the property line kind of sloping down. This is the proposed floor plan. It's not final, it's not what's submitted on their building permit, but this is what they provide for the purposes of our discussion today. What they would do, they would have redo this bathroom to provide wheelchair turning space, wider doorways here, create a master bedroom, living space, and breakfast area with an open floor plan. You can see this is where the current back wall of the house is, and this is the proposed addition. Here's a photo from the backyard. You can see that little staircase, and the proposed addition would stop roughly in the area of the yard, so it wouldn't go all the way up to the hill. It would be short of that. The applicant's mother has been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and so she has a need for some housing space that can work for her care. And these are some photos of her assistive devices, wheelchair, walker, recliner. And this is photos of the bathroom, and you can see how the way it's currently designed, not really handicap accessible. And then this is the rear of the house. Currently, you see there's a step up the patio up into the kitchen area. And then this is the kitchen off the back of the house. Go back to the floor plan. So that's here. So that sliding door is roughly in this location here. There are standards to granting the variance, and all four of these standards you're familiar with, but all four have to be met. But number two is the kind of the one that's interesting here, is that state statutes say that a variance can be granted when necessary and appropriate to make reasonable accommodation under the Fair Housing Act for a person with a disability. And what that does is it works to be an exception to the hardship criteria that's listed in number two. Well, in this case, we did find some things that we pointed to that are peculiar to the property, but those are, in addition to that, we have this situation where to make reasonable accommodations, we feel that the variance would be appropriate to be granted. And I'll give you a minute to look over the findings before we go through them. There are a lot, and I'll try to be as brief and quickly as quickly.
John, this is not, that language is not on our standard sheet. Added.
Sorry, I don't have a copy of that.
Well, I don't know, hardship resulting from personal circumstances.
On page 2.
No, we're looking at this piece
We're looking at this.
that they gave, this is just something they've given the board.
Oh,
It doesn't say that
The-
fair housing.
It doesn't,
Language.
this doesn't say about the fair housing
I
language.
think we took it off of that handout because it created a while back. It is in the UDO.
Okay.
Okay.
Or the last sentence.
Oh, here.
So in the UDO, it reads like this. In the
Okay.
UDO.
You mustn't confuse us, John.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Additionally, very necessary.
This is going to, this sticks to the land.
Right. And that's why we asked for the condition, because variances run with the land. We want it to apply just for this reasonable accommodation and not be an open-ended, you can do anything you want on the property within these setbacks, basically. So we want it to be specific to the reasonable accommodation and not allow, for example, later down the road, they wouldn't be able to enclose the patio space. But if something happened, to the house after they did this addition, the variance with the way the conditions worded, non-conformity stuff, we would allow that to be reconstructed. Y'all ready?
They continue.
So the lot is a legally non-conforming lot as it relates to the minimum lot size. The minimum lot size for N1B is 8,000 square feet, and this lot is under that 7,405 square feet. The home is positioned near the front and side setbacks of the lot so that the only place for any addition on this property is in the small area at the rear, which is approximately 10 feet deep. And if you go back to the plan for the survey, you can see basically this space here is the only space within the building envelope. And it's about 10 feet deep right there. In addition to the home's placement, the lots and lot size, 160D, 705D2 of the state statutes and UDO Article 37.8A, 13A2 state that a variance can be granted when necessary and appropriate to make a reasonable accommodation under the Fair Housing Act for a person with a disability. Fair Housing Act prohibits state and local land use and zoning laws, policies, and practices that discriminate based on characteristics under the protected under the Act. And the Fair Housing Act defines a person with a disability to include any individual with a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activity, an individual with a record of such impairment, and an individual who is regarded as having such an impairment. The term physical or mental impairment includes but is not limited to diseases and conditions such as orthopedic, visual, speech, hearing impairment, cerebral palsy, autism, epilepsy, muscular dystrophy, multiple sclerosis, and I won't go on to name them all, but there's many more. The term major life activity includes activities such as seeing, hearing, walking, breathing, performing manual tasks, caring for oneself, learning, speaking, and working. And it's the list of major life activities that's not an exhaustive list. Some of the examples. The applicant has provided a signed letter from her mother's doctor stating that the applicant's mother has multiple sclerosis. The applicant has submitted photos of her mother's physical assistive devices and photos of the existing bathroom and living space that demonstrate that reasonable accommodations are necessary and appropriate for a person with a disability. The applicant has demonstrated that the variance is necessary to make reasonable accommodations for the accessibility and care needs of the person with a disability who resides in the home. And the applicant has agreed to the condition that the variance to reduce the setback would apply to the proposed addition described and its placement and its replacement if it's damaged and not apply to any future additions or redevelopment of the parcel. As seen in the applicant's photos of the rear property, the location of the home and addition sit at a lower home elevation than the homes to the full court, and an existing privacy fence reduce the potential visual impacts of the addition. It would not alter the essential character of the neighborhood. There's a sign on the property. Any questions you have?
Questions from the board? Or do I hear a motion?
Move to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Court. Do I hear a second?
Second, Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Williamson.
Prior to the vote,
Yes, ma'am.
Board Member Ford, do you mean move to approve with conditions?
Yes, move to approve with the conditions specified by staff.
Thank you, Ms. Hewitt. Okay, so Mr. Court has made a motion to approve this variance with the condition that the reduced setback does not apply to any future additions or redevelopment of the parcel. As stated, and Mr. Williamson has seconded. Okay, Mr. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Shea?
Say yes.
Ms. Sun?
Sun, yes.
Mr. Court?
Court, yes.
Dryden, yes. So the variance is approved. All right, we now continue with, I'm sorry, the finding of, where's my brain today? Okay, the finding of facts. Do I hear a motion to approve the finding of facts as written?
Court, move to approve.
Mr. Court, your second.
Williamson, second.
Thank you, Mr. Williamson. Mr. Court?
Court, yes.
Sun, yes.
Yes.
Mr. Williamson?
Williamson, yes.
And Bradley, yes. I promised to get my act together. Okay. All right, moving on. We now have variance number 2025-0007 for the property located at 15627 Albion Lane. Thank you. Okay, you can go. Thank you.
No, this is case number variance 2025-00007 for accessory structure. Craig Stover is represented by David Murray for property located at 15627 Albion Lane, owned by Craig Stover and Eileen Stover. The variance is to 17.141 to allow accessory structure in the front setback. In Exhibit 1, you would see the vicinity map. It's located off of Lake White. Exhibit 2 shows the zoning, which is N1C Neighborhood 1 zoning district. Here is the close-up of the aerial of the site on Exhibit 3. Exhibit 4 shows the bird's eye view of the property. The variance request is to allow an accessory structure in the established front setback. Staff recommends approval of the requested variance with the condition that the maximum area of the possible ADU portion of the accessory shall not exceed 1,000 heated square feet per Article 15(6) F6 of the UDO. In Exhibit 6, you can see a survey. Here is the home and the proposed garage here in the front setback, left side. Exhibit 7 shows the topography and lake buffer. It varies, topography varies from 608 to 598. To consider in Exhibit 8, you can see the proposed, the home is here, the existing home. The front setback, established front setback. The established side yard. Established rear. And the lake buffer. Exhibit 9 on the left is the road to the applicant's driveway on the left, the view of the driveway to Albion Lane, and the location where the accessory structure will be built. Here's the variance criteria, if you'd like to take a look at the findings of facts.
Can we just change the wording on the,
Let's look at number 9. It says, due to the home's location towards the rear of the lot, the steep topography sloping down the lake, and the 50-foot lake buffer, there is not room to locate. I would prefer it to say there's no room to locate, or not enough room. Can we reword that? It's just clumsy in its
Yes.
articulation.
I understand. Yes, and under staff recommends approval of the before number 1,
Right.
would like to add accessory structure shall not exceed. So missing the word structure there.
Oh, the accessory structure, okay.
And there's one more thing, number 14.
Okay.
Towards the end, front setback will avoid impacts to the lake buffer. If we can add to the,
Placing the accessory structure in the established front setback will, say it again?
established front setback will avoid impacts to the lake buffer.
Okay. What did she say? Avoid impact. Okay. So what did you change 9 to?
9, you added, there is not enough room, so add the word enough.
Okay, thank you.
Can I see the flag again, please?
Sure.
Graphics are getting staff. Okay.
So looking at the topography of this, they're gonna have to build that, where they're gonna build the accessory structure. Are they gonna have to fill that to level it? Because it looks like it's pretty, I mean, I'm just curious.
Let's try to find.
One with the that one,
Here.
that's where they're building, so they are gonna have to do a lot of grading.
Yeah, they could accomplish that either by grading or doing a step foundation.
Oh, okay.
So they might have to grade the driveway up to it, but they could also do a step foundation, either one.
Yeah, you've got some options with the SC.
I mean, I was just curious. Okay. All right. Okay, you,
Thank you. Unnecessary hardships result from the strict application of the ordinance because it requires the detached accessory structures to be located in the side or rear yard. The UDO requires a 50-foot lake buffer along the shore of Lake Wiley. Due to the home's location towards the rear of the lot, the steep topography sloping down lake and the 50-foot lake buffer, there is not room to locate an accessory structure in the side or rear yard. The hardship results from conditions that are peculiar to the property because the lot is located on Lake Wiley and the topography is steep, sloping towards the lake. Additionally, there is a 50-foot wide water quality lake buffer over the rear yard. The hardship does not result from actions taken by the applicant. The home was constructed in 1996, and the site constraints existed prior to the owner purchasing the property in 2008. The requested variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance in that the public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved. Placing the accessory structure in the established front setback will avoid impacts to the lake buffer. It is not uncommon for properties along the lake to have accessory structures in the established front setback due to topography and lake buffers. Other lots in the neighborhood, including the abutting property to the east, have similar detached accessory structures in the established front setback. Granting the variance would not adversely affect the adjacent or contiguous properties, and granting the variance will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood. And here's a sign on Exhibit 13. The sign is posted on the property. And that's the end of the presentation.
Help me with the critical watershed. This is CA, not CA 1, 2, 4. Why is that? How big is this lot?
It's-
It's 0.944 acres.
944 acres, I see.
Yeah.
Help me understand the CA designation. Why isn't it CA 1, 2, or 4?
I'm not sure. I might have to look in the ordinance and see what area that's falling under likewise, unless Solomon, do you know?
So you guys don't care about the UA, correct?
That's a stormwater and watershed regulation. Correct,
So they can deal with the UA.
correct.
Okay.
Any other questions for staff? So this condition, they have agreed to that the maximum area of so it is heated space that they're requesting, correct? Right. Yeah,
Okay. Yes, the applicant confirmed that it will be about maybe 940 or something like that, so it'll be under 1,000 square feet.
But they have agreed to that.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments?
Motion to approve.
Mr. Shea, make a motion to approve with conditions.
With conditions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Shea. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Court. Okay, Mr. Williamson,
Williamson, yeah.
Mr. Shea,
Say yes.
Ms. Sun,
Sun, yes.
Mr.
Court, yes.
Court, yes, sorry. I'm driving, yes. Okay, and now we're gonna look at the finding of facts and with the condition, and we made a change to number 9, we added the word enough. We made a change to number 14, we take off the S of impact and added to the lake buffer. Any other corrections? Oh, we added structure to the initial staff recommendation, so it will read, possible ADU portion of the accessory structure shall not exceed. We make 3 changes. So do I hear a motion to approve the finding of facts and conditions of law as amended?
Court, move to approve as amended.
Mr. Court, do I hear a second? Thank you, Mr. Shea. Okay, Mr. Williamson,
Williamson, yeah.
Mr. Shea,
Say yes.
Ms. Sun,
Sun, yes.
Mr. Court,
Court, yes.
Dryden, yes. So the variance is approved with the conditions. Thank you very much.
John, what is the wording on, what's the wording on ADU? It's gonna be less than 50% of the dwelling?
Yeah, I think that's the most recent wording, yes. Yeah, maximum, the ADU portion can be a maximum of 1,000 square feet. The ADU or the accessory structures themselves, 50% of the first floor building footprint.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're moving on to variance number 2025-00009 for property located at 2000 Juniper Drive.
And this was another one that I think the original agenda had the incorrect parcel number, and that's because they made some changes with some parcel lines. But basically, the new parcel number is what's reflected in the agenda that you were handed today,
Okay.
041124449. And I think Crystal will have an edit to the findings of fact when we get to that point.
Okay, thank you.
This case number variance 2025-00009 to reduce the rear setback. Aldace Equity 3 LLC is represented by David Murray for property located at 2000 Juniper Drive. Owned by B&B Builders of the Carolinas LLC. The variance requests to Article 4.3 from setbacks for N1B zoning in Article 4.3, Table 4-2 of the UDO to reduce the rear setback from the required 35 feet to 30 feet, a 5-foot reduction. Exhibit 1 shows the vicinity map is off of 77. Exhibit 2 shows the zoning map, which is N1B Neighborhood 1 zoning district. Here is an aerial map on Exhibit 3. The variance request is to reduce the rear setback from 35 feet to 30 feet, a 5-foot reduction. Staff supports the requested variance with the condition that only a single-family detached dwelling and associated accessory uses and structures shall be permitted on the property. On Exhibit 5, you can see a survey. Here's the proposed building footprint. It's in the light gray line, and then the proposed 30-foot rear setback.
Can you get back?
Sure.
Out there now, house is coming down. So is this legal non-conforming?
It is,
Line?
yeah, existing legal non-conforming lot. You're welcome. And if you can go over the findings of facts, I do have an edit to add while you're looking over them. It's the parcel ID number at the very top of the document. The number should be 04112 449.
Can you go back to the other picture, the overall, over, yeah, that one and then before it, doesn't really matter. So. So there's nothing on the right or the left?
Correct.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Wait, so what's the? I'm surprised that staff is in support of this. How big is the pad? What is the legal pad that would be there now allowed? Is that, I can't see those dimensions. Is it like, is that correct, 35 or something?
Yes, so the minimum required setback front is 27 and the rear is 35, leaving 34 feet of depth for the building envelope, whereas what's proposed would be 38 feet in depth.
34 and 38?
Correct.
What's the width? 34 as well?
Correct.
34 by 34. And they want to go 34 by 38. Is that correct?
Yes.
So were all these lots recently a larger lot, or have they recently subdivided these things, or are the 3 properties in a row there closed and were sold in February?
Yeah, I think they were all part of one tax parcel, but they reestablished them as separate lots because they were pre-existing lots, legally non-conforming, but they were combined as one tax parcel ID, and so they reestablished them as separate parcel ID and sold them off as individual lots as they had originally were platted. So that's what you're seeing in February is them taking those pre-existing lots and selling them off, basically.
So help me understand why you're in favor. I'm confused about why you're in favor of increasing the pad by 4 feet or 5 feet.
Well, I guess if Crystal wants to go through the rest of the findings, she'll talk about what we feel are the hardships for the property.
All right, so unnecessary hardships will result from the strict application of ordinance because of the small size of the building envelope and the lack of depth of the property, which creates a small building envelope. The hardship does result from conditions that are peculiar to the property because of the unique shape and narrow depth of the lot created with the relocation of Juniper Drive during the construction of I-77 in 1965. The lot is legal non-conforming lot and does not meet the minimum lot width and area for N1B zoning district. The hardship does not result from actions taken by the applicant. The parcel is an existing legally non-conforming lot and was not created by the property owner. The hardship results from the lot debt resulting from the relocation of Juniper Drive. The requested variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance in that the public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved. The proposed variance will permit the construction of a home that is 38 feet in depth and consistent with other single-family detached homes in the area, which range between 25 to 45 feet in depth. Granting the variance would not alter the essential character of the neighborhood. And Exhibit 9 shows the signage on the lot. And that's the end of the presentation.
Is that the existing house that's going to be demolished?
I believe so, yeah.
Do you have a picture that shows how Juniper Drive was relocated or the distance from I-77?
Go to the area, Crystal. So you can't really, I tried to find some historical imagery from the 1960s. And we do have some, but none of it shows the construction of 77 at Juniper. But basically Juniper used to, if you look at the plat of these lots, they used to be much longer lots that would extend actually into where the right of way of Juniper Drive is now. But when 77 was constructed, you can see it there on the left-hand side of Exhibit 3 here, they relocated Juniper Drive to the east, which made those lots all along Juniper. And we've seen several variances on Juniper already. But basically, Juniper got relocated and all those lots got a lot shorter. And that, we feel, is what's creating the hardship here on these parcels.
Okay.
That's helpful.
Yeah, that makes more sense to me, seeing this visual and understanding that in our haste to build I-77, then we negated this property. Don't look at me like that. Okay, thank you. That's what I needed to know. Any other questions for staff or discussion, board? Are you done? Are you finished, Crystal?
I'm finished my presentation.
Thank you. I guess my question, just out of curiosity, when you build a house, does that 4 feet make that big a difference?
If you have a
Hamilton?
plan that you have built over and over and over again, and that's what you want to use, then yes.
Okay. So it's probably a reusable standard.
So it's a difference between 1156 square feet versus 1292 square feet.
It's not big, not a lot.
I think when you get down to like 35, in the 35 to less than 40 feet on width or depth, I mean, just when you subdivide the rooms and put hallways in, like you get to have really small rooms, and so marketability of it is limited if you have smaller rooms. So I think that the 35 to 40 range it's hard to get a normal house plan into less than that. It ends up being a different looking house and different looking product.
Okay. And they still can put accessory structures on this lot?
You guys put a condition on saying
Yeah.
single family only.
Single family only, okay.
And it's
Detached dwelling.
What's
And-
associated?
Accessory uses, so what were you
uses
thinking?
and structures.
Accessory uses and structures shall be permitted, so they could put I don't know, there's not space for a garage, I guess, or
Yeah, they can get a garage there.
they get a garage. Okay.
I don't know the exact floor plan of this, but I believe based on the design of this, there's a garage here.
Oh, okay. There's a garage already in the. Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments, board? Okay, do I hear a motion?
Court move to approve with the conditions as specified by staff.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Court. Do I hear a second?
Williamson second.
Thank you, Mr. Williamson. Okay, Mr. Court,
Court, yes.
Ms. Sun,
The Sun, yes.
Mr. Shea,
Shay, yes.
Mr. Williamson,
Williamson, yes.
Dryden, yes. Okay, let's look at the finding of facts and conclusions of law, and we made one change to the parcel number. We amended that. And so do I hear a motion to approve the finding of facts and conclusions of law as amended and with the condition? The staff.
Shay to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Shea. Do I hear a second?
Court, second.
Thank you, Mr. Court. Okay, Mr. Williamson,
Williamson, yes.
Mr. Shea,
Shay, yes.
Ms. Sun,
Yes.
Court,
Court, yes.
and Dryden, yes. Okay, thank you. That variance is approved. Is everybody okay? Do we need a break? All right, next case is variance number 2025-00010 for the property located at 0 Juniper Drive.
It doesn't have an address yet.
Case number variance 2025-00010 to reduce the rear setback. Capital H LLC is represented by David Murray for a property located at 0 Juniper Drive and owned by B&B Builders of the Carolinas LLC. The variance request is to Article 4.3 from setbacks for N1B zoning. In Article 4.3, Table 4-2 of the UDO, to reduce the rear setback from the required 35 feet to 21 feet, a 14-foot reduction. Exhibit 1 shows the vicinity map, and same things off of I-77. The zoning map is N1B zoning on Exhibit 2. An aerial map of the site. This is a variance request to, from Article 4.3 from setbacks from N1B zoning to reduce the rear setback from the required 35 feet to 21 feet, a 14-foot reduction. The applicant agrees to the condition of only a single-family detached dwelling and associated accessory uses and structures be permitted. Exhibit 5 shows the proposed building footprint is the lighter gray box. And then the proposed 21 feet rear setback. Here is where we go to the findings of facts. There's no changes on this document.
Okay.
PowerPoint presentation, we have it on there as the builders, but it should be capital A. I just wanted that for the record, small record reflect that the presentation, the owner is actually capital A.
Excuse me, Crystal, can you go back to the pictures of the lot,
Sure.
please?
And I just wanted to mention for the record, it shows capital, the owner to be B&B Builders of the Carolinas. It should be capital H LLC. This is just a PowerPoint. It doesn't reflect on the findings of facts or anything.
It's on the applicant. It's on this. It says capital H LLC. On the finding of facts and conclusions of law.
That's correct on the findings of facts.
Yeah, it's in the PowerPoint presentation. It was just
It's
the
right,
old,
okay.
the older ownership.
So let's go back to the, show me the lot pick there. Okay, that one.
Right, so staff is doing this because this lot is shallower than the one we just talked about. Right, correct.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
I can read over the findings of facts to help out with explaining our reasoning why we support it.
Okay, let's go ahead with that.
So necessary hardships will result from the strict application of ordinance because of the small size of the building envelope and lack of depth of the property, which creates a small building envelope. The hardship does not result from conditions that are peculiar to the property. The hardship results from the conditions that are peculiar to the property because of the unique shape and narrow depth of the lot created with the relocation of Juniper Drive during the construction of I-77 in 1965. The lot is legal non-conforming lot and does not meet the minimum lot width and area for the N1B zoning district. The hardship does not result from actions taken by the applicant. The parcel is existing legal non-conforming lot and was not created by the property owner. The hardship results from the lot depth resulting from the relocation of Juniper Drive. The requested variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance, in that the public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved, because the proposed variance will permit the construction of a home that is 38 feet in depth and consistent with other single-family detached homes in the area, which range from 25 to 45 feet in depth. Granting variance will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood. And here is the sign posted on the property shown on Exhibit 9. That's the end of the presentation.
And you say the applicant has agreed to the condition of only a single-family detached dwelling.
That's correct.
Comments or questions from the board? Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve?
Court move to approve with the conditions as specified by staff.
The court, do I hear a second?
Shay, second.
Okay, Mr. Williamson,
Williamson, yes.
Mr. Shea,
Shay, yes.
Ms. Sun,
Yes.
Court,
Yes.
and yes. The variance is approved. And let's look at the finding of facts and conclusions of law. We didn't make any changes, I believe, and draw your attention to number 7, that with the condition of only a single-family dwelling. So do I hear a motion to approve with conditions, the finding of facts and conclusions of law?
I move to approve as stated with the stated condition.
Mr. Court, do I hear a second?
Second.
Mr. Williams? Okay, Mr. Court?
Court, yes.
Ms. Dunn? Mr. Shea?
Shay, yes.
Williamson?
Yes.
Yes. That variance is approved with condition. Okay.
No, it's the other one as well. The owner name is in on there. But actually the owner is now.
So this,
Yeah.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we will now hear variance request for number 2025-00011 for property located at 2016 Juniper Drive. Ms. Moulton, you may continue.
Thank you. This is case number variance 2025-00011 to reduce the rear setback And just like before, the PowerPoint shows B&B Builders of the Carolinas as the owner, but it's actually Northway Homes.
Okay.
2025. And they're represented by David Murray for property located at 2016 Juniper Drive. The variance request is to Article 4.3 from setbacks for N1B zoning. In Article 4.3, Table 4-2 of the UDO, to reduce the rear setback from the required 35 feet to 21 feet, a 14-foot reduction. Here is the vicinity map. And Exhibit 1. Exhibit 2 shows the zoning map. There's existing home on the lot. And the zoning is N1B zoning, Neighborhood 1 zoning district. Exhibit 3 shows the aerial map. The variance request is to reduce the rear setback from the required 35 feet to 21 feet, a 14-foot reduction. There is a condition, the applicant agrees to condition of only a single-family detached dwelling and associated accessory uses and structures be permitted. Exhibit 5 shows the survey. The proposed building footprint is in light gray. And then the proposed 21-foot rear setback is from here to here.
That is it.
Here's a chance to go over the findings of facts. I did want to point out number 5, there's no change. I just want to speak about it. The lot is approximately 73 feet in depth from front to back at the shallowest point and 86 feet at the deepest point. The minimum required front setback is 27 feet and the rear setback is 35 feet, leaving 11 feet of depth for the potential building envelope.
These lots were on Polaris. Am I looking at the reconstituted, up-to-date lines? Were these
Yes.
lots platted years ago?
They were platted years ago. What you're seeing on Polaris is basically them reflecting what the plats.
They were platted.
Yeah.
So-
They were wider, obviously, front to back, because, when it
Understood.
was platted, 77 didn't exist.
Understood. So there, just so I'm clear, is there a point where staff would require a non-conforming lot to become a conforming lot?
If they were all under the same ownership, then we would require them to be recombined to create a conforming, or it's closer to conforming. If it couldn't be made conforming,
Very interesting.
you're required to make them conform.
That's the issue.
And so the original owner, B&B Builders or LLC, acquired the property, reconstituted the lots as they were platted, reestablishing them, and then subsequently sold those off to the owners who are the applicants for the variance request.
Wow. Okay. Thank
All right, any other questions for staff?
Crystal?
Would you like me to continue with
Yeah, just-
this part here?
You got one more question, or go ahead, Crystal.
Okay. Necessary hardships will result from the strict application of ordinance because of the small size of the building envelope and lack of depth of the property, which creates a small building envelope. The hardship does result from conditions that are peculiar to the property because of the unique shape and narrow depth of the lot created with the relocation of Juniper Drive during the construction of I-77 in 1965. The lot is legal non-conforming lot and does not meet the minimum lot width and area for N1B zoning district. The hardship does not result from actions taken by the applicant. The parcel is an existing legally non-conforming lot and was not created by the property owner. The hardship results from the lot depth resulting from the location of Juniper Drive. The requested variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance, and that the public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved. The proposed variance will permit the construction of a home that is 24 feet in depth and consistent with other single-family detached homes in the area, which range from 25 to 45 feet in depth. Granting the variance would not alter the essential character of the neighborhood. That here is photo of the sign on the property and in Exhibit 9. And that's the end of the presentation.
This was 34 by 30. It's gonna be
Chairperson Dryden, as a quick reminder to the board, any deliberations or questions you may have need to be done openly so that staff and the applicant can hear in case you open the hearing for them. Also, your deliberations are open to the public.
Okay. Well, I was just curious. Okay. For the variance will permit the construction of a home that is, so what would be the actual size of the house? 24 by what? 24 by 30, 24 by,
The building footprint is 24 feet in depth. So
30 plus
33,
30 plus whatever that little porch is at the bottom.
30 plus 8.
Yeah, about 30.
All right, about 38, 24 by 38,
okay.
about approximately.
Okay.
If you look at the footprint on the screen, it's the back wall is got the 30 feet measurement on it, and then there's the, I don't know if it's a porch or whatever,
Mhm.
that's 8 feet there. It's that dimension. So the bulk of the house is 24 by 30.
24 by
By 30.
30, okay. That's a little house. Okay, any questions for staff?
Make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Williamson. Do I hear a second?
Court second.
Thank you, Mr. Court.
Is that a motion to approve with conditions?
Yes, with the condition, it's number 7 on the finding of facts, with the condition. Okay, Mr. Williamson has made a motion to approve this variance with the condition that only a single-family detached dwelling and associated accessory uses and structures will be permitted. Mr. Court has seconded. Mr. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Shea?
Say yes.
Ms. Sun? Court?
Court, yes.
Dryden, yes. Now looking at the finding of facts and conclusions of law. Do I hear a motion to approve with the condition?
Court moved to approve with the condition as stated.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Williamson, second.
Mr. Williamson? Okay, Mr. Court,
Court, yes.
Ms. Sun, Mr. Shea,
Say yes.
Mr. Williamson,
Williamson, yes.
and Dryden, yes. So, thank you very much. That is approved. Okay.
You want to do a break now or after this case? This one might take a little bit longer,
Then let's
but
take-
it's on the recommendation.
Let's take a break right now for, give us 10 minutes. Stretch our legs. Thank you.
Oh, I can read it.
I like that.
No, because somewhere in here it says, just say, other than addiction caused by current illegal use of controlled substances and alcohol. So drug addiction, I would say alcoholism falls under that, addiction caused by current illegal use of controlled alcohol, controlled substances. I think somewhere in here, it has to be noted by a physician. With a record of such impairment. Yeah, that's true. That is interesting. Yeah. Using the ADA, the Fair Housing Act to get around that, yeah. What about that, Terry? We were just looking at this, about the fair housing, that question, because it says here that physical or mental impairment includes, and it goes on to say diabetes, developmental illness, drug addiction, and alcoholism. So could you, I mean, I just think you say, oh, but I want this ADA, especially, that. I don't know. What are the parameters?
So
Here's mine, Krista.
we list everything that's in the Fair Housing Act.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think from a zoning perspective, we're looking more at physical impairments.
Okay.
That there's some physical issues that they need in their structure, which would be part of it. So just because we may have a disability, those who are under, okay, doesn't mean it really just depends on the type of disability and whether you can make a connection between the disability and
And I think somewhere in the statute, there's got to be something that says about a doctor, something that, from a medical professional that says.
Well, we need to verify now. So, with like people who are recovering addicts and that, where we see that is a different thing. So usually that's what we say.
Oh, right.
So we've got, the city of Charlotte has a special consent decree. We got sued by the federal government on
Yeah.
so we want to consent decree because we had somebody changed our separation requirements. So we have a whole process about separations and that kind of thing. So that's usually what we do.
Okay.
That they need to
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just, the more I do this, how broadly they encompass something.
Yeah.
And how it.
And this is new. This is more like 160D, pretty much. Well, maybe not 160D, but like 2019. So there's no guidance.
Right.
Should be applied to.
Right. Right.
And so we're thinking about like doing a policy, and explain it and then the texting them in the UDO. There's a whole process so that they know the kind of information we need from them.
Right.
When they're submitting an application. We have like information from them.
Right. Right.
To justify.
To justify that. Because, I mean, we built an accessory structure. But at the time we did it, we didn't have, it's all within our lot size. We didn't go, there was nothing that we were outside of. We had a lot big enough to accommodate for my parents.
Yeah.
And, it's ADA, it's got all the handicap stuff in that house. The wider doors and all of that stuff. But thank goodness we didn't have to go through zoning because the property was big enough and we were far enough off the farmland and all that stuff.
So it's totally contrary to what you because it's not supposed to be.
Right, yeah.
Supposed to get Then adding this is to manufacture, it's what lets you to think about.
Right.
So, for some reason, it made it the other side.
Well, there's always,
Have you all, any of you going to the,
On the fourth-
April?
yes, I am. I mean, I got the notice, so yes, I'll.
Are you going? Okay. Did you let them know if you wanted to go?
I mean, I got the invitation. I mean, it says, you know, you signed up for this, so I assume they know I'm coming.
Yeah, we probably need to just make sure, has everybody registered? Yeah.
Okay.
But, yeah, that should be good. It's always good to get.
Oh, yeah, I always enjoy those meetings. And, I just have to figure out where the place is they're doing it this year, because it's not here. It's someplace else.
But it's in Charlotte.
Yeah, it's in Charlotte. It's just in a different building
Oh,
or
okay.
it's in. Because I didn't recognize but that's not till April, so, you know, I wasn't real. Oh. But it is something I'll mention when we do the minutes to make sure that.
Let's try to ask everybody,
Yeah.
at the end of the meeting, okay?
Yeah, that when we do the minutes,
Yeah.
It's April the 14th. All right, Commissioner, you have a minute. All right, I got an email that said you had signed, that I had signed up for the training on April the 14th. Do I have to respond to that? I didn't. It just said put it on your calendar and, well, I don't know. I can't do it right this minute. Email about the page I've got to, I'll go back, so I'll look at it again, because it didn't say register or anything, it just says you are registered.
Yes, sir. We did the rest of the week.
Okay. Well, we're gonna talk about it when we see it, when we look at the minutes. I sign them, I'll ask if everybody's coming up. Because it's not here in the numbers, and there's someplace else. Oh, okay, well, we'll talk about it. But I've already put it on my calendar.
Yeah. If I'm actually, I'm in.
Oh, okay.
I love it.
Yeah. I'm just thought of this. Nicole, how's the chill? Okay, for a while.
Scan them in and save them. Digital scan them in and save them. Well, sorry, I'm on board. Okay. Turn on the page. It's like I gave you 2.1.
Right there, building.
Actually,
What's the story? There's still one.
So
it's like a hotel. Thank you.
So there are a few. I painted the whole house in 2006.
There's a lot of that going on.
We installed the shower door. I don't even, I never I scrubbed it.
It does get old.
Yeah, you're right.
You could be, could be arriving around 8.
Okay.
We'll probably be wrapping up right around that time. Yes, maybe.
I hope, yeah.
See how the next 2 go.
So, yeah, hopefully this very.
Did you guys do graphics? Or was that from the applicant?
I did that.
Did you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Very nice.
Crystal puts everything in there, and then I usually will go in and put the label.
It does make a difference. The only complaint I have, I'm telling you,
So, what's colors that you have programmed?
green red.
He said y'all,
Okay.
he's buying a
So
lot.
I can't.
problematic.
And,
Orange is close enough, I'm okay.
Okay.
But,
zoning or permitting or somebody had made him go back and redraw all his plans, redo everything.
Yeah, yeah.
So he's not making that up? Okay.
This is
So
me.
you can't see the laser pointer?
I cannot see anything you do.
Okay, so we can use our cursor then.
Yeah, anything like that would be helpful.
Okay.
You guys point, I can't see a thing.
Okay. All right. I'll try to, I need to, maybe, shoot me an email with the colors that you have trouble seeing on the PowerPoint, and then we'll try not to use those.
How you doing,
How you
Good
feel?
fit. Go
I
ahead.
try to think about that when I'm putting together the labels. I was like, I know Kevin's colorblind and he struggles with colors, but I never can remember what colors it is. You have.
Great. I'll mail it to you.
Okay.
I'll mail it to you.
Okay.
But anything that you can do.
Yeah, and then maybe
Yeah.
we can find a purple laser pointer. or
Yeah.
something.
It's like the middle unit never had a
White.
white.
That guy had white.
Did he have a white one?
Yeah, it was white. It was like super bright.
Thanks, John.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll come back to order, please, and we'll continue with our meeting. Our next variance is number 2025-00012 for a property located at 801 East Arrowwood Road. Thank you.
One second.
Okay, Mr. Kelly, thank you. Thank you. This is the one I didn't like.
Sorry about that. I needed to give our CDOT staff person a heads up that we were getting onto this agenda item so they can be here in case you do have questions.
Okay, thank you. Good deal.
All right, so while we're waiting on them to come down here, I'll go ahead and get started with the summary of the case. Greystar Development East LLC, represented by John Carmichael of Robinson Bradshaw for property located at 801 East Arrowwood Road, as parcel owned by 801 East Arrowwood Road LLC. They're requesting 3 variance requests. Part 1 has a couple items that were added since I think the agenda packet was sent out, and I'll make sure to point those out when I get to them. But the first variance is from table 13.1B to expand the size of the frontage build to zone along proposed private street. For building 1, that would go from a 0 to 10 foot build to zone to a 0 to 30 foot build to zone. And for building 2, a 0 to 10 foot build to zone to a 0 to 20 foot build to zone. And then table 13-5 to eliminate the requirement for a primary pedestrian entry for building 1 that faces the road. And we should probably add the words that faces the street at the end of that sentence. And then from table 13-7, eliminate the requirement for 1 prominent pedestrian entry, again, that faces the street on that item there. Variance number 2, from Article 16.6 for building 1 to eliminate the pedestrian connection from the adjacent from the building to the adjacent public sidewalk along proposed private street, and instead provide an indirect connection to the sidewalk along proposed private street. And then variance number 3, Article 33, Table 33-3, to allow a 5-foot sidewalk at the back of the future curb along the site's frontage of East Arrowwood Road. Here's the vicinity map of the property. It's the corner of Arrowwood Road and Old Pineville near South Boulevard. Here's the zoning map, or Exhibit 2 is the zoning map of the property. Zoning is TOD-CC Community Transit Community Center Zoning District. And you can see in the aerial the existing large, what used to be a big box retail store and associated parking lot that is proposed to be redeveloped. Exhibit 3 is just a site map of the property showing building footprints. And then Exhibit 4 is a close-up aerial of the property. And Exhibit 5, street view of the property. You're on Old Pineville Road looking towards the existing building. And Exhibit 6 is the variance requests. Again, three main variances. Variance from Table 13.1B for the Build 2 zone requirements for buildings 1 and 2. And then Table 13-5, eliminating the primary pedestrian entry, and 13-7, eliminating the prominent pedestrian entry for both for building 1. The ordinance requires that those face the street. And then variance Article 16.6 for building 1 to eliminate the pedestrian connection to the adjacent public sidewalk and instead provide an indirect connection to the sidewalk along the proposed private street. And then a variance to Article 33, Table 33.3 to allow a 5-foot sidewalk at the back of the future curb along the site's frontage of Arrowwood Road. Staff supports the request with the condition to replace any trees found to be in poor health per the tree plotter inventory that was provided by the applicant, and that would be also verified with an on-site inspection by urban forestry staff.
John, if I can interrupt you, if it's okay with Ms. Hewitt, could you just refresh our memory on what was done last month?
So last month, we did have a variance case for the same site. That variance was for the buildings that are along Arrowwood Road, buildings 7, 8, 9, and the amenity clubhouse to reduce the build to frontage along Arrowwood and Old Pineville Road because of the steep topography leading down from that the grade of the existing parking lot down to Arrowwood, and then the retaining walls that you have along Old Pineville Road. And those were all constructed and put in place when Old Pineville was installed and located at this current location with the intersection of Arrowwood to the west of South Boulevard. And then I think those were the main things. And there was also included variances to the pedestrian connections from the buildings to the street.
Right.
Because of the retaining walls and the steep topography, they're not able to have those direct pedestrian connections from the building out to the road.
So where are we dealing with now?
So today what we have is looking at building 1 and 2 along this proposed network required street. And this is a required street. They have to put it in due to the subdivision connectivity requirements. And it has to stub to this western property line here. So the elevation of this property is higher than the elevation of the road down here. To meet the grade on that street, the grade requirements, they need to install a retaining wall from here, approximately, kind of goes around the property, because all this, there's a topographic map that'll show this, but all this sits up higher than the rest of this property.
And while it may be relevant to understand the history of what's been done previously with regards to this property, I would just remind you and urge you to consider this application on its own merits and for what it is.
Oh, I agree. I just wanted to refresh your, it's a different piece of the property. I understand that, but I think for our perspective, it's good to know what we agreed to last time.
So, now you were pointing upper left, yes?
Yes, upper left. Sorry, I'm later pointing again. Should be able to see. Yeah, building 1 is this one that's kind of catty-cornered to the property line, and then building 2 is parallel to the proposed street. The retaining wall is this dark, heavy line. And the reason why they're proposing a retaining wall, and this another exhibit will show this. I think. Well, we can just continue on. Exhibit A is the topography of the property. So majority of the property is around. There's a 642 there, 646. Majority of the middle of the property is around 646 feet, 648 over here. But if you look at the western portion of the property, we go up to 670. The neighboring property is at 680, about partway through. And then Bow Road is at roughly 688 in elevation. So the idea of the future connectivity is you have this future street that would stub to this property. And then at some point in the future, if these abutting properties redevelop, Bow Road would be connected up to that proposed network street. And so to meet that elevation of Bow Road, the elevation of the new street coming in has to be basically planned out ahead of time so that those connections can be made relevant to the required street design standards for street elevations and grades.
And I'm sure this is a stupid question, but why were these not defined last month?
So they had not gotten the finalized grading plans yet of the street for this proposed street whenever we looked at it previously. So they wanted to keep things moving with what they had been working on within their site plan. Now that they've got that additional information for the proposed street, that's why we're seeing this variance today. This is just exhibit 9 is the road profile plan. Again, showing how once you get up to building 2, the grade of that street starts to rise towards the western property line. And again, here's a kind of a cross-sectional view on the top showing that rise in elevation up to where Bow Road is, which is, I think, indicated right here. So again, it's about a difference of 20, 30 feet in elevation. And then also I'll go back to the rendering for this to explain it. So for the other variances for 16.6 to eliminate the pedestrian connection, the ordinance will require you to have a direct pedestrian connection from the building to the road, or as near as direct as feasible. In this case, because of that retaining wall, building 1 can't have a pedestrian access out to the public sidewalk along the proposed private street. So that sidewalk connection will be basically internal to the site below the grade of the street, but put down on grade with the rest of the property. And pedestrians would be able to go basically to the end of the retaining wall to get to the public sidewalk, which is roughly where my cursor is here at the end of building 2. Building 2, they have that pedestrian connection coming straight out from building 2 to the public sidewalk. So that's why we only have that variance for building 1. Same with the prominent entry and primary pedestrian entry facing the street. The way that's been interpreted is that this building would be expected to have a doorway here at the end of that building, closest facing to the street, because of the retaining wall and the design of that building. They're requesting that variance to eliminate that requirement. They're still going to have a pedestrian entry and primary entry into the building 1, but it would just face this parking area rather than facing the road. So that's the reasons for the second and third parts of variance number 1. And then the last one, variance number 33, the cross section for the streetscape on Article 33 is detailed out on exhibit number 10, which is the Arrowwood Road streetscape plan. And what the ordinance require is for the curb to be relocated to accommodate a 3-foot buffered bike lane, and then an 8-foot sidewalk and an 8-foot planting strip, and then an 8-foot sidewalk. You can see in the street view conditions here on exhibit 10, there's these existing oak trees along the back of the sidewalk. The sidewalk is 5 feet wide. You can see that again on the lower left-hand image, those existing trees right at the back of that 5-foot sidewalk. So the applicant will be relocating the curb line according to the ordinance requirements in the policy map, or the streets map, not policy map, the streets map. But what that curb relocation does is it puts the sidewalk then that's there at the back of curb. And then rather than tearing out that 5-foot sidewalk, tearing out all the trees and having to cut into that steep slope, you would require probably a retaining wall to accommodate the 8-foot planting strip and 8-foot sidewalk. So rather than creating more retaining walls on this property and cutting down these existing mature trees, that's why they're asking for variance to be able to keep the sidewalk that's here in place. You can kind of see that on this, it's a little faded, but on this cross-sectional view, you can see how there would be the bike lane, the sidewalk, 5-foot at back of curb, and then you'd have your sloping trees that would remain.
Just so I'm clear, zoning would require an 8-foot, I call it multi-path, is it not called a multi-path?
I don't know if it would be considered a multi-use path or just a sidewalk in this case, but the ordinance requires an 8-foot wide planting strip and an 8-foot wide sidewalk.
Part of the reason for that is for bicycle traffic.
I think typically if we're looking at bicycle traffic, the width would be 10 or 12 feet. But this has a buffered bike lane as part of this cross section. So I think that's why we would only require an 8-foot sidewalk here as opposed to a 12-foot multi-use path.
Thank you.
The ordinance requires the curb line to be moved to the future location as part of the development.
So where's the curb? Is it closer into the trees? Is that what the problem is, or?
The curb line would move towards the trees, towards the front edge of the sidewalk. So currently, you can see it in this cross section, the upper left-hand image. This curb line is here. That the ordinance would require them to relocate that curb to be at the front edge of the sidewalk, and that's to accommodate a 3-foot buffered bike lane. And currently, there is a bike lane out there, but it's substandard. The streets map would require that to be the 3-foot buffer bike lane. And we do have Brendan Brazil with CDOT staff. If you have questions about the streets map and this exact street design standards for this cross section.
Just out of curiosity, y'all ever do when you go out there and count cars and stuff, traffic count, ever do a bike count? To see if these bike lanes getting used?
I'm not sure.
If that,
We would need to swear.
if that question is better served for staff from CDOT, he would need to be sworn in.
Right.
Yes.
So, sir, we'll just do that. So if there's any questions for you,
Just come up.
if you'll
come up
just
here.
stand over here, please.
Raise your hands there. Swear to tell the truth.
And before, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the evidence you shall give to this board, that this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? All right, will you state your name and spell it for the court reporter, please?
Brandon Bill, BRA, last name Brazil, BREC,
Thank you, sir. Okay, the question to you was, do you count bikes?
I'm not aware of the council role in this facility now.
So, this is not about bikes, is that all right?
It's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they might have more questions for you than that.
So the ordinance requires the curb to be moved.
Yes.
And is the variance request changing that requirement?
No.
Okay, so the curb's being moved regardless.
Correct.
So the variance request is, so currently on the screen, I'm looking at an existing road streetscape, and I'm looking at a proposed Arrowwood Road streetscape. Is the proposed the with variance, or is the proposed what it would look like if there were no variance?
The proposed would be the width variance. So basically, what this is showing the existing condition. The top image showing the existing condition with the existing substandard planting strip. I don't know exactly how wide it is, 4 or 5 feet, I think. And then the proposed streetscape would be not to have a planting strip at the back of curb. They would have the existing sidewalk at the back of curb, and then the planting strip would be behind the sidewalk with where the trees are, basically.
So they're proposing to leave the sidewalk where it is and just rebuild the curb right up on the edge of the sidewalk.
Correct.
I guess my question is, you want them to widen the road for a bike that it's a safety, so I assume it's a safety concern to have the road that close to the sidewalk.
So staff we're supportive of the variance request because there would be a 3-foot buffered bike lane between pedestrians and the traveling vehicular traffic. And as you know, I haven't gotten to it yet, but if we want to take a look at the tree plotter, that we do have 10 oak trees out there, and they're all over 20 inches. There is one in poor health, and it's about midway down. If you look at the upper left-hand image, you can kind of see a bit of a gap in the middle of the tree foliage. That's where the poor health tree is. That one they said that they'd agreed to replace. So from an urban forestry perspective, they're not city trees. They're not quite large enough to be considered heritage trees, but they are well-established mature oak trees. And we feel that they do make a good, and it's consistent with the streetscape across the road on the other side of Arrowwood. So we feel like from a streetscape and appearance standpoint, preserving those trees, keeping that shaded walk is a good trade-off to having the wider sidewalk where we wouldn't have those mature trees anymore.
And possibly they'd have to put up a retaining wall.
And there
if
would
they took the
probably
trees
be additional retaining walls needed because of how steep the slope is on Arrowwood.
Yeah, I guess y'all are missing my opinion would be that you leave the street where it is, leave the trees where they are, leave the sidewalk and where they are. But we know we want to save trees. We know we want bike lanes. We know we need sidewalks. We have all of those right here where they are. I'm not sure I understand why we're making them widen the road for a bike lane that we don't know if it gets used.
Yeah.
If I may, so the current bike lanes are substitute. We have a lot of concerns for cyclists. Cyclists today because they only have a couple feet of non-buffered space right directly next to vehicles. Arrowwood's a high-speed, high-volume traffic roadway, so I think John keeps referring to it as a 3-foot buffered bike lane, but it's so it's got a 3-foot buffer, 5 foot for the cyclists. It does cut into the planting strip, but you still maintain that buffer and that separation from cars over to pedestrians. So you still have that shy distance. It's still giving them that comfort and safety away from vehicles.
Can you explain the cross-section of a 8-foot buffered bike lane?
Sure. So it's basically off of the edge of your gutter line here. You'll have 5 foot where a cyclist can safely use, and then there's essentially a shifted driving area to provide additional separation between the bike lane and the roadway travel lane.
Is that the preferred buffered bike lane? Is that like the best buffered bike lane that we have in our manual?
That's currently our standard for the city of Charlotte, yes.
I digress. Keep it. Sorry.
The Exhibit 11. Trees. And then Exhibit 12 here is just the standards for granted variance. All 4 of these standards need to be met. And then I'll let you take a look at the findings of that for Exhibit 1.
Okay, I just want to, let's go back and make sure I have this clarified. What you are proposing and what they're agreeing to, or in this variance, is that we would provide the 8-foot bike lane, whatever the ordinance says, by moving the curb line closer to the sidewalk. So, and then leave the sidewalk where it is and leave the trees where it is.
Correct.
And the justification is that the bike lane would kind of be the buffer for the 5 foot as opposed to the 8-foot sidewalk. That there would be some safety there because they would be that far away from the actual cars.
Yeah. And additional justification for the variance is that it protects the trees and
It
eliminates
protects the
the
trees.
need for retaining walls.
Okay, thank you. That was just so I can get that clear in my mind. Okay.
Does the does the city have any cross sections that include a multimodal that would allow a multimodal pathway in lieu of a buffered bike lane on this road?
So we do in areas allow a shared use path where it's a wide concrete, wider sidewalk to allow for commingling of bicyclists and pedestrians. On this roadway, since it already includes bike lanes, it would probably be a little out of character. And looking up at the top where the property is that's getting developed, you would have to transition cyclists from the street up there just for their little bit of frontage and then back into the street. So it's just not a comfortable or easy navigation for cyclists typically if we're moving them in and out of the street like that onto a shared use path and then back into the street. So that's why we would prefer to maintain the bike lane here in this case.
Any other questions before we proceed? Okay, John, you may proceed.
Okay. Unnecessary hardship results from the strict application of the ordinance because the retaining wall adjacent to the building 1 and 2 and proposed private street prevent compliance with the required build-to zone. The purpose of the required private street is to set up for future street network connectivity to meet the grade requirements, and elevation of the street must rise to meet the elevation of those adjacent properties. The retaining wall separates the grade of the development of the site from the grade of the road. Building 1 is the westernmost building on the proposed site and abuts the retaining wall for the proposed private street. The retaining wall adjacent to building 1 and proposed private street prevents direct pedestrian connection between building and the street. The applicant is proposing an indirect pedestrian connection. The purpose of the required proposed private street is to set up future street network connectivity, meeting the grade requirements of the elevation of the street would have to rise to meet the adjacent properties, and the retaining wall separates the grade of development site from the grade of the road. Installation of the required streetscape would result in the removal of 9 existing mature trees, all over 22 inches in diameter, and cutting into the steep slope behind the 5-foot sidewalk along the site frontage of Airwood Road. Hardship results from conditions that are peculiar to the property. On the site is an at an elevation of approximately 644 feet. The topography of the site rises towards the western property line approximately to 670 feet, and the elevation of the adjacent parcel to the west ranges from 674 feet to 690 feet, and the elevation of Bow Road is at 684 feet. The grade of the proposed private street must rise approximately 30 feet from the 644 feet to 674 feet to allow for future connections per the street network requirements. The applicant's plans show the proposed retaining wall approximately 277 feet in length between the proposed private street and buildings 1 and 2. Due to the elevation of the development site and abutting property and the grade of the proposed private street, the retaining wall adjacent to building 1 and the proposed private street would prevent direct pedestrian connections between the building and the road. And the site was developed in 1990 as a commercial retail store with a large service parking lot in front of the building. The parking lot is at an elevation of 644 feet. And the grade of Airwood Road and Old Pineville Road decline from the north and west down to 618 feet where the two streets intersect. There's steep topography along Airwood Road with an elevation change approximately 10 to 20 feet within the 30 to 40 feet parking lot is from the street. According to the applicant's tree report, verified by certified arborist on urban forestry staff, 10 red oak trees are existing directly behind the 5-foot sidewalk at the base of the slope along the Airwood frontage, and 9 of those trees are in fair health and over 22 inches in diameter. Hardship does not result from actions that are taken by the applicant because the hardship results from the requirement to install a network required street, and the elevation of the site and abutting property. The network required street would provide connectivity and the steep topography and existing trees along Airwood Road. The applicant did not own the property when the commercial store and the associated parking was constructed. The applicant did not create the steep slope or plant the trees along Airwood Road. And the requested variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance, in that public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved. The site is zoned TODCC. The purpose of the TODCC district is to encourage transit-oriented development and transit-supportive development near a transit station. The proposed development is located north of Airwood Station on the Lynx Blue Line, and granting the variance would support redevelopment of the old suburban-style big box store retail site into a transit-supportive residential community. As shown on the applicant's plan, without the retaining wall between the proposed private street and buildings 1 and 2, the slope between the street and buildings would push the buildings further away from the street and increase the build-to zone to up to 65 feet. Buildings further away from the frontage would be less consistent with the spirit and purpose of the build-to zone standard in the TODCC zoning. Pedestrians will have access to building 1 and the public sidewalk along the proposed private street via internal sidewalk connections shown on the applicant's plans, and primary pedestrian entrance and prominent entry that directly faces the frontage would not serve a useful purposes. They would face a retaining wall for the private street. Per the applicant's plans, the curb line along Airwood Road would be moved according to the streets map, and the required bicycle lane would be installed. The bicycle lane would provide safe separation between pedestrians and vehicular traffic, and the applicant has agreed to the condition that the trees shown in poor health will be replaced, and granting the variance would not impact the adjacent properties as it will maintain the grades along the public street. Here's an exhibit 17 is a photo of this sign on the property.
Okay, I have a question about, it says per the applicant's plans. It says that a couple of times in here, because the only thing, the condition was that the trees in poor health would be replaced. But does that give the builder some wiggle room if it says they probably would, the plans, but if the plans change, do we have anything? Is there any guarantee that what they say they're going to do, they're going to do? If it doesn't say it's a condition.
Are you referring to the condition for the tree replacement, or?
Well, like number 26, it says per the applicant's plans, the curb line along Airwood Road would be moved. Is that cut in stone? He can't, according to his plans, but does he have to do that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So
he could ask if
So it doesn't have to be a condition because he
That's
knows that.
correct,
it
because
has
it's part of
to
the
be.
local
That's all I was asking, because, we work real hard to make sure the conditions are met. And when it says that's could and should,
So,
you know,
so think of it as if, let's just say for some reason they decided not to do with the variance, we would then go and say, hey, now you gotta show us the 8-foot planting strip, 8-foot side.
okay, that's, like I say, the difference between what I should do and what I could do. And if it's per the plans, that's a could, whereas a condition is a should.
Yeah, so some of those, when we say per the plan is that's the way they've shown us, but those are requirements that they have to meet. So
Oh.
even if they change something, we still
Thank you.
staff.
That clarifies that for me. That makes it better. Okay. Any other questions, comments?
I do have a typo in number 12. Oh, no, sorry, number 23. In the last sentence, buildings further away from the frontage would be, instead of would, just be would be, less consistent. Just add the word be
Okay.
after the word.
John, I do have a question, if you could please clarify. At the beginning of the findings, it states that the condition is to replace any trees found to be in poor health. However, on condition number 27, it appears that the language shows the tree to be shown in poor health. Can you clarify if the condition is just for the one tree that has been identified or for any trees that are identified to be in poor health?
It's just, there's just one tree that's been identified to be in poor health. So, I mean, I would say the condition is for the one tree been identified.
For the board, when you're making your motion. If when you're making your motion, it is a motion to approve, I would recommend reading the condition as it is stated in number 27.
Okay, as a condition. Okay. Okay.
John, number 8, the language on this is the frontage built to zone along blah, blah, blah. Are you referring to PTZ or is that just verbiage there?
To expand the size of the front. Yeah, that's the build to zone requirement.
So it is a BTZ.
Yeah.
So that writing, that structure is correct.
Yes.
Just for my information, how much time does staff and the applicant put in to get to this point right here?
We've been working on this one for, I don't know, 2 or 3 months now, I guess.
And did you guys have friction on the location of a private road?
So we weren't involved with those discussions. That was all determined whenever they were drafting their initial plans and what subdivision requires. Subdivision ordinance requires certain spacing between network required streets and activity centers. So I'm not sure what those are exactly, but that's how they arrived at the street location.
Okay, so for the building number 1, we're asking to not have a door at the end of the building because it would face the retaining wall. They're going to put it more in the center of the building, correct? Access.
Yes.
And there's no connectivity to the street because of the retaining wall. So they're going to build a walkway outside of the building that then will intersect where after the retaining wall ends, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And where's the transit center? Is it to the bottom right or is it up? So that from that picture, just show me that picture and just tell me where.
It's off the page, but
Okay,
it's
that's-
bottom right
okay.
hand side.
I was just trying to figure out how, like, if I lived in building 1, I mean, I was just how I would walk to get to the transit center and circumvent all the.
You were in building 1, the most direct route would be to come basically south, straight out from the building down towards the sidewalk on East Airwood Road, and
Okay.
then you'd walk along East Airwood Road to get to South Boulevard.
I mean, that was just a curiosity question for me. Because, you're talking about walkability to a transit center, but then there's all these retaining walls and there's all these things that cause me not to be able to you would direct. That's fine. Good. Okay, any other questions for staff? Or, yes, sir.
Yeah, so I'm trying to think about the purpose and intent of all this stuff. And in 22, you're talking about the purpose of the district is to encourage transit-oriented development and transit-supportive development. And so you're stating that this will no longer be a big box anymore, and it will be transit-supportive residential community. So I guess the question is, what is transit supportive about this development rather than just a regular residential community? I feel like these variances make it keeps it as a residential community, but does not, they eat away at all of the transit supportive. And when I say transit supportive, we've talked about purpose and intent and having, the proximity to the street creates a pedestrian environment. And that's the purpose of the proximity to the street. And so this pedestrian environment is really what we're talking about. And none of these things are supportive of that pedestrian environment. And they erode that. And the only condition that we've given them is to inspect the trees. The only mitigating thing against all the things that have eroded the pedestrian environment in these variants is inspecting the trees. Are there other mitigating things that we've required them to do as conditions, or that were considered to support the transit supportive portion of this?
So I think, so when we take the term of transit supportive, what's happening is this applicant decided that he is doing a residential product. So what's happened is, because I would say it's more supportive because we have a suburban big box being eliminated, and now you're getting a more dense, compact. We've got buildings to the street, we've got sidewalk, but obviously there are some existing conditions that, in a perfect world, if this was a flat site, you're right, we would be getting those buildings closer to the street. We would be getting this 8-foot planning strip, 8-foot sidewalk law where you're increasing it. But what we're doing is saying, hey, because we know that it's a higher site and we've got these retaining walls, when the applicant made the request, we understand it. So think of it as kind of like when we say transit supportive, it's getting residential, but not, I want to tell people, like, when we're saying that, it's not every site is going to provide every single aspect of transit support. So like here, this guy's doing residential, maybe in a couple years, 20 years from now, those retail, if you see those retail buildings in the corner, maybe they become more dense retail buildings and provide some support. And now we've got a mixture. So it's like, sometimes don't think of it as a sense of we want one individual property owner to say, hey, you've got to provide all those mix. It's going to be several property owners getting together at a time. And there's pluses, and it's plus the good as that there's that, again, as part of keeping some of our trees, it would be, because ultimately, yes, I guess say staff could say, hey, we're not in support of the variance, but then we know all those trees are coming down, because at some point that property owner is going to say, well, I've now got to tear those trees down, and now I've got to put retaining walls. And that's part of it. So when you're looking at that, trying to maintain that character of the community, because again, we've seen those healthy trees that are out there. So that's why we put that, especially for the one and we added the condition, because again, right now there's only one tree that's out there that appears to be in a declining health.
So planting strips have the advantage of supporting tree life. Do they have safety? Is there a safety aspect to a planting strip?
I mean, you're getting pedestrian traffic away. So you have I've got the right of way for vehicle traffic, and I have that pedestrian planting strip, and you have the sidewalk. So technically, it makes it for a more comfortable environment when walking. Think about like in your neighborhood if you have a planting strip of trees, it's giving you that more. If I'm walking my dog down that sidewalk, it's giving me a little more safety, not being when you have those little parts of town where we got sidewalk back a curb on a busy road. It just makes for an uncomfortable environment for people who walk in general.
So currently, if we grant this variance, we'll have the trees, but we won't have the safety aspect of the amenity is the planting strip and the location of the planting strip. If it's behind the sidewalk, you get the trees, but not the safety. But if it's in front of the sidewalk, you get newer trees and safety, I guess.
Well, we're getting the buffered bike lane. That's kind of, it's kind of, I guess to say in a perfect world, it would be, I get the buffer, in a perfect world, it would be, I get right away, then the buffered bike lane, planting strip, and sidewalk. Obviously, what something is at some point on some sites, we realize as staff, something's going to have to give. And at some point we said, hey, we're still getting the curb moved for the future back of curb. We're getting the buffered bike lane, and then we're still getting the planting strip behind it where the trees are being saved. And now we're putting in a 5-foot sidewalk.
And my justification is only that because you put the bike lane in and they don't check how many bikes, my guess is there's probably not right this minute very many bikes that go there. But that bike lane kind of takes the place. It's not green buffer, but it is a buffer between where the cars are speeding by and where the sidewalk is.
And kind of think of it as, you're also saying, hey, like, the bike lane may be not used today, but I think at some point,
Well, I'm saying,
like I said, yeah, I think of it as a city, like Brandon, all of us, we're thinking 20 to 30 years where that becomes all dense, and then there are going to be people riding their bikes. It's just today we know it's when in these areas where we put our transit, these were suburban areas, and now they're starting to convert. So now you're as a growing city, you're seeing that we're all today in that part of seeing that transition. But
and I think it's a trade-off. I mean, since there is the bike lane that's wide and it is kind of the buffer, the trade-off is cutting down 10, 12 very mature trees, because they're not going to put those trees back. They're going to put a retaining wall there. If we go with the grass and then the sidewalk and all that. So you're losing the shade for the sidewalk, you're losing the aesthetic of trees. And Charlotte's supposedly known for its trees. So for me, I would rather err on the side of let's leave the trees, only because we have that wide bike lane. I think will be somewhat of a buffer for that narrow 5-foot sidewalk that you're walking on.
If we're throwing our opinions in there or trying to, you could take that perspective of keeping a tree that is established. You could also take the perspective that Solomon presented of the bikes might not be here today, but they may be here in the future. So the location of a tree and its benefit to the city behind the sidewalk versus in front of the sidewalk, taking a long-term view, a tree that's on the backside of the sidewalk could be subject to that root ball being disturbed by the movement of that land behind it in the future. And so those trees could all be lost in 20 years, maybe 30 years or 40 years. But a street tree that's built in a protected planting strip in between the sidewalk and the street is probably going to last a lot longer because it's on city property. There's nobody going to, it's kind of locked in there. And I'm trying to stay out of opinion. I'm trying to stay. But
I would also encourage you to stay away from speculation. I think at this point, you've been presented with an application. You have to make a determination about whether it meets all of the standards. I would also remind you that staff has also thrown in their support, which isn't outcome determinative, but should provide some persuasive authority for you. However, if you still have more questions or concerns, this is a recommendation agenda item. You are certainly allowed to open up the hearing and give the applicant the opportunity to discuss, as my understanding is their applicant and their representative are here. However, if you have looked at the application and the evidence that's been presented and it meets all of the standards, the law requires you to make a particular decision.
And I think I'm with you 100%. I think where I would diverge a little bit, if we insist that we have the right of way, the bike lane, planting strip, the 8-foot and blah, 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 then we start insisting that the owners, the applicants, we're putting a tremendous amount of work on them and cost on them to move the retaining walls and take them down. And I think the trade-off is we get to save the trees. If we don't insist on that, if we go where you're thinking to where that road should look, the amount of effort we put on the owners, I think, is just not fair. I don't think that's reasonable to put. So I'm with you 100%, except for the fact that I just think the onus on the applicant would become so severe that's not fair. And I think if you look at it that way, I think the trade-off is we take the bike lane that CDOT's proposing, we do away with the strip, we keep the sidewalk as is, trees. I think that's the best we're going to do. That would be that's where I kind of fall on that. So I completely agree with what you're saying about the transit-friendly piece of it. But I think we have responsibility that we can't put that kind of an onus, and obviously staff does too. We can't put that kind of an onus on the applicant.
I think there are hardships, and the magnitude of hardships, based on sizes of property. I don't know if there's I get it. It's going to be more expensive, but this is a big project, and I get it. They don't want to build a building right up to the 10-foot lot line, but topography's topography. You can build around topography. If topography were the largest hardship in the world, nobody would ever build in Asheville. How would you, if you were trying to create a pedestrian environment in Asheville, and the retaining walls could be built everywhere and you just grade the world flat because it's a hardship to build things to the street, they'd never be built. There are many things that each one of these things could be overcome with different design solutions, and it just in the sidewalk portion is just the most troubling to me because my experience on 5-foot sidewalks at the back of curb is horrible. Like there's not a single street I've walked down where the sidewalk's on the back of curb where I felt safe, much less right near the super high traffic area. Like this is like the population density on this road and out this way. This is a transit-oriented development, denser, but this is a very dense portion of the city. There are multifamily developments all down that road, and a 8-foot bike lane at rush hour will probably be an express lane if we're conjecturing or making.
Again, I would caution you away from information that's not been presented as evidence in your hearing because you cannot make decisions based on evidence that has not been presented before you.
And one thing I would say about when you think about transit oriented, whether we go with what the city has proposed with the bike lane and removal of the strip and leave the 5-foot sidewalk, or if we say, okay, we got to have the bike lane, we got to have this, take out the trees. They're going to put they're going to have to put something. The retaining wall is already there at the top to reinforce that. There's still not going to be any access to that sidewalk for pedestrians to come from that part of the down because there's a hill and there's a retaining wall. So regardless of which one we choose, whether we say, no, we don't want this, we want something else, or we want this, there is not going to be any access for people to walk down to that sidewalk.
Yeah,
Now, the
well,
transit oriented, yes, to walk around, and I understand. But I agree with Mr. Shea. I agree with you in principle, but these are hard decisions to make. And I don't know that I'm ready to just say, I'll throw in the towel and cut down all those trees. Because they're not gonna replant the trees.
they would have to replant street trees in a street, in the planter strip. They would be required to plant street trees. And I hear what you're saying, the access from the property. I don't think that the intent is that when they rebuild streets, that they're just talking about their property out to, I mean, they're talking about people moving through these properties, through these city streets. So you're talking about all the people who live up Arrowwood Road that have to walk, miles and miles to the transit stop to get on the light rail. They're trying to provide a friendly pedestrian environment for those people so that they can safely get to the transit stop through this property that is being redeveloped by this particular development. I think the long and short of it is I don't know that I'm necessarily seeing, I think I have difficulty reconciling the spirit and purpose, intent, and safety of the standards for the variances. I feel like most of the facts support the variance. And I guess I'm most disappointed that there aren't any mitigating factors or mitigating conditions to offset the variances that we would be granting.
And Chairperson Dryden, I understand that you've been deliberating for a while. Let me just remind you that your requirement is a majority of you.
Right.
So at a certain point, just ensuring that if all of you have stated your deliberations, that we can move forward since we still have other cases on the agenda.
Okay, Mr. Williamson, you have any thoughts or comments before we decide to vote?
I would like to make a motion to approve the variances.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Williamson.
Cheryl, second.
All right, with the, gentlemen, with the condition, correct, that the tree and poor health will be replaced?
Yes.
Okay, so Williamson and Shea make a motion that we approve this variance with the condition. And we'll go down the list. Mr. Williamson,
Yes.
Mr. Shea, Ms. Sun, Mr. Port,
No.
and Dryden, yes. Okay, now looking at the finding of facts and conclusions of law, I'll draw your attention to under the request. I think Mr. Kinley said that under, no, it's on the very first page, where he says from the table 13 through 5 to eliminate the requirement for a primary pedestrian entry for building 1 that faces the street. Is that correct, Mr.
Yeah,
Kinley? That's what
Please add the word faces the street.
faces the street, and also from the next one, from table 13.7, 13-7 to eliminate the requirement for 1 prominent pedestrian entry that faces the street. They just added that little phrase on both of those at the top of that page.
Then edit the number 23 with the word B. After the-
Right, B, and then approved with, with the condition of number 27 as a condition. Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve as amended and with the condition?
Motion to approve as amended with the condition.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Cheryl, second.
Thank you, Mr. Shea. Okay, Mr. Williamson,
Yes.
Mr. Shea,
Yes.
Ms. Sun, Mr. Court,
No.
and Dryden, yes. So the variance is approved. Thank you very much. All right, we're going to take a really quick break before we hear the last case.
Person Dryden.
Yes.
May I be excused and let you take my place? I need to make a 11:30 call.
You may be excused. And Mr. Young, you may come and take his seat at the table. Hopefully, yeah. Thank you, Hamilton, for your robust discussion.
I knew I was getting them out of my lane. Try not to.
It's important to have the conversation because I think that this gives an idea of how the board considers these and maybe hopes in the future.
I think it's just hard when you. So here's the street, and they wanted a bike lane, they wanted a turn lane, they wanted a place for the buses to park. But here, this is how wide. This is how much you gotta do for the bike lane. And what they realized was there was not room for all of that in this.
Yeah.
So. I mean, I agree, I don't like 5-foot sidewalks, even when you're walking by yourself, they're just so. It's hard to believe that was the norm for years and years and years.
It had a planter strip. A planter strip's not, you know, if you got a 5-foot sidewalk and a planter strip, it's not that bad.
But then we defer to the bike lane because that's the ordinance. The bike lane because it's not a one.
Really frustrates me is the whole, like, CDOT said they couldn't go from the street onto a multimodal and back off. Like, they could just, if they just, they're rebuilding the curb anyway. Just rebuild it right there and put the sidewalk, put the bike lane up above the curb. CDOT won't let them do that.
One of the most frustrating.
I know. That was the main.
Historic district, so you guys are not the only ones who would counter this thing. Remind themselves multiple times, you can't decide the process for me.
I get it, Josh, but I don't want to get going on and off. I guess that's.
You guys, you need to let Commissioner know if you are planning to come to that. So I think you said you have 5 slots, so she needs to know so she can invite someone else. I'm going. I'm gonna say afternoon. I want to say. Yeah, and it's not here in the government center, it's someplace else.
I can't, I'll see you in the spring break.
Okay.
What was it for?
UNC.
Yeah.
School of Government.
Where is it?
I think it's at the Central Iowa Council of Governments.
Where's that?
I want to say it's up, like all states somewhere, something like that. That direction, like north of town somewhere.
I don't know,
That's kind of check, because if we're gonna have a majority of the board you're probably gonna have to notice it as a meeting.
Yeah.
Either me or three, however. you have probably a meeting.
We can do that. Once we get the-
Count.
Yeah, we don't have any cases for that board.
I'll let them know that. Okay. I think we're ready.
Ready?
Yep, is Gary gonna come over there?
Yeah.
All right.
I don't think Terry is back to you guys.
All right,
All right, I'm here on the now.
All right, we are back in session. Thank you very much for your patience. We'll now open the evidentiary hearing for variance. This is a variance request for number 2025-00006 for property located at 5208 Milford Road. Okay,
and we do have speakers here, speak in favor of this case, so
Okay.
when we get to that point, you'll need to swear them in. This is a case by Robert Swearigan for property located at 5208 Milford Road, and variances to Article 4.3, Table 4-2 to reduce the rear setback from 35 feet to 7.9 feet to allow an existing attached garage and utility room. Exhibit 1 is a vicinity map showing the approximate location of the property down off of South Boulevard, north of Tyvola, off of Seneca Place, and it's where Milford Road comes off of and intersects with. The green outline on this map, Exhibit 2, is the zoning map and shows the footprint of the property, and the zoning is N1B, Neighborhood 1 zoning district. Exhibit 3 here is an aerial map of the property showing the house and the area we're talking about. That's the garage and utility room is this portion of the house here, which is the left-hand side of the house. Exhibit 4 is the street view image of the house. It's the property that's here in the middle of between the two houses. So their driveway is this one with the stamped
Okay,
stone.
the property is to the left, but the driveway is the
Yeah.
one we're seeing.
Yes, the driveway is in the middle, and the house is to the left.
Okay.
And you can barely see at the back corner here. You can see the corner of I think that's the corner of the garage. The corner of the house is here.
Okay.
You can kind of make that corner of the house out there, and then the corner of the garage is here. So you can't really see it from the road. Exhibit 5 is just this restating of the variance request. Again, it's to, should be that's the wrong article reference. Article 4.3, Table 4-2, to reduce the setback from 35 feet for N1B to 7.9 feet to allow that existing attached garage and utility room. Applicant has agreed to the condition that the requested variance is granted. If the requested variance is granted, that the requested variance would only apply to the encroaching garage and utility room and its replacement if it was damaged or destroyed by an act of God. Basically, it would basically allow the existing condition to remain is what that condition is for. The exhibit number 6 is a survey of the property. And on the survey that was done in October of 2024, when the property was listed for sale and Mr. Swearigan decided to purchase the property, he had this survey created. And that survey is what revealed the encroachment into the rear setback. So this heavy dotted line here is the rear setback of 35 feet. And then this portion of the structure is what's encroaching. And at the nearest point, it's 7.9 feet from that rear property line. And that's, there's like a utility room basically here and a garage here. You'll see that in the pictures as we go forward.
So it was an existing structure when he bought it,
Correct,
so why does he need a variance if it was already there?
because it's a zoning violation.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, John. I'm sure you're gonna get to it. This is attached or detached?
It's attached.
It's attached by definition.
Yes.
So they want to replace what was there.
They're actually not wanting to do anything to it at this point. They're just wanting to be able to maintain what's there without having to bring it into conformance with the code.
And John's gonna explain it.
Okay,
Let him
yeah,
go.
okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to get ahead of you.
So exhibit number 7 is shows the plot plan that was issued in 2006 by the previous owner. And you can see on the plot plan, it is incredibly hard to read and tell what's going on here. I've done my best to, I think what it's trying to show is some proposed additions. There existing conditions, I'm not really sure, this dashed lines. And then you can see here, they had written garage, but then that was struck out and then was handwritten in 3-car carport. Carports are different than a garage. Carports are open, the garage is enclosed. And then you also note that the plot plan showed the side setbacks, showed the right of way, and it showed 40-foot minimum. At the time, the old zoning, the requirement was a 40-foot setback. So this was R4 under the legacy ordinance, which had a 40-foot setback. It's since changed under the UDO to N1B, which is the 35-foot rear setback. Still, the structure that is existing encroaches into the rear setback regardless. But it was indicated on this plot plan that there was a 40-foot minimum rear setback.
Maybe that was the pipe dream.
And they were wanting to do, this was an application for an addition.
Yes, and it says residential addition is what that says here on the first page of the permit.
Bedroom, bath, porch, carport, shed.
Yes, yeah, bedroom, bath, porch, carport / shed. So that was in 2006. So now I'm going to go into a bit more history digging. Aerial exhibit number 8 is an aerial map from they disappeared, but it's in the bottom right-hand corner, December of 2009. So this would be a couple years after that permit was issued, and you can see this space here, which is basically the utility room space that we were referring to, and then the driveway parking area comes in behind the house, wraps around, and you have parking in the back.
So that it didn't turn out to be a carport then.
Yeah, nothing built here in 2009 except for the utility room space. Then in exhibit number 9, 2011 and 2014 aerial maps. The 2011 image, you can see what appears to be either a wooden or a block wall that's been erected in the area where the parking in the back of the house was located. And that coincides with the area on this permit of where this supposed carport was.
How's the wall? Car in the middle.
It's open in the front. There's a beam that runs along here. So
And they didn't have to get further permits. They just went back to the 26.
we could not find any other records other than a 2006, and then there was a 2007 permit for, I think, another small addition or
So they
a
just
mechanical permit or something.
built it, whatever they.
There may have been a permit that was issued, but we don't have records of it. So as far as we're aware of, there was no additional permits granted.
Interesting.
So in 2014, you can't really see it very well because the image is dark, but so that wall is where my cursor is here. Kind of see the corner of the wall here. So that lines up with this corner on the 2011 image. But you can also see a detached, I think it's a 2-car structure. I don't know if it's a carport or a garage, but there's a 2-car structure here, and you can see the roof of that. And it's not attached to the utility room. It's just placed within that brick wall, block wall, 2x4 wall, whatever the wall is. It's basically with about where that white car is, and that's in 2014. Then slide exhibit number 10, 2015 and 2016 aerials. You can see in 2015 that detached two-car structure. You can clearly see the wall for the area that was outlined as being a carport. You can see the utility room space with the continuous roof line attaching to the house. And then in 2016, sometime between 2015 and 2016, they constructed the three-car garage where the carport was going to be, and then that roof line ties in at the apex. It ties into the roof line of the utility room, so that's all one continuous structure now attached. 29 exhibit 11 is 2019 and 2025 aerials, and again you can just see the attached garage and utility room to the house at the back. And it's just the 2025 image is just a bird's eye imagery of the more recent existing conditions out there. Exhibit 12 is a closer zoomed in street view of the front of the house. And then exhibit 13 are some photos that we pulled from the real estate listings showing the three-car garage. You can see this doorway here goes into the utility room space. This is the utility room space. And there's no connection, pedestrian-wise, there's no connection from this space to the rest of the house. So there's a wall, basically. This wall runs all the way through, and there's not a way to get from this building or portion of the structure over into the rest of the house. So currently to get from the house to the garage and the utility room space, you have to come out into this courtyard area here and come in through the garage door. So that's, hopefully you kind of understand how the layout works. I think on the other side of this is, so the other side of this wall would be the main living space of the house. Exhibit 14 is just a map of the building footprints of the neighborhood. And you can see it's also got the zoning layer on. And so abutting to the rear of this is a shopping center zone TOD, transit-oriented development. Transit, I forget what the TR part stands for, transit something, transition, TOD transition. And then you can see in the footprint, all the rest of the houses in the neighborhood have, the standard, pretty standard uniform building size. And you can see the footprint for this house is much larger due to that addition that was done in roughly 2015. This is exhibit 15 showing the street view of the rear of the property. Again, this is basically the back side of that shopping center, and there's a hedgerow and a block wall, and then you can see the back wall of the house here just on through the bushes. Number 16 is the variance criteria. All four of those need to be met for variance to be granted. And I'll give you a few minutes to look over the findings before I move along.
John, I have a question. It shows that this house was sold in November of last year. Should this have been found out during the closing process by the closing attorney?
So when the applicant reached out to us, when they had the survey created in October, when they were looking at doing their due diligence, they reached out to us and made us aware of this issue. And we told them at that time that it would be it's a zoning violation, that we wouldn't send code enforcement out to issue a notice of violation, but it was a violation, and that could present an issue if at some point in the future the property were to be sold, or you were trying to get title insurance. Sometimes zoning violations can pop up as issues when you're going through those processes. And then also, if for some reason that portion of the structure were to be damaged by an act of God, it's not considered legally non-conforming, so they wouldn't be able to rebuild it. They would, if that was damaged, it would have to be built back in conformance with the regulations of the ordinance. So given with that information, the applicant decided to pursue a variance so that they could try to get the zoning violation resolved and make it basically a legally non-conforming use or structure on the property.
Got it.
And the utility, I must have missed this, the utility room, the 3-car garage are attached?
So the 3-car garage that's existing and the utility room are attached to the house.
They are.
By the roof. The roof is
Yeah,
attached.
it's all the wall. They share a wall,
Oh, okay.
and the roof is continuous. It's all one same roof structure that connects together.
So if that connection, just we're on the same page, that this U shape, if that was a breezeway break, if some portion of that U, the bottom of the U, yes, exactly right there. If some portion of that was a breezeway, we would call it a detached structure.
Yes, if it was a breezeway or if it was detached and didn't share a common wall and there was space between them, or there was a breezeway connection, then that would be considered a detached structure, and then that would be compliant because the detached accessory structure can be 3 feet from your property line.
So structurally, how would you resolve that if you wanted to, would have to?
I mean, I'm not a builder, but I would think that you would need to just rebuild that back wall, the common wall between the garage and the house.
Separate it.
There would be, you'd have to do something to resolve how the roof line would
was
change
attached.
because you'd have to create slopes of the roof. But that would be the resolution to make it detached. Which one you want to look at?
So just so I'm understanding, we're basically trying to grant a variance for something that's already been done.
Correct.
Yes. Okay. Where is it? So, the hardship did not result from actions taken by the applicant or the property owner. The act of purchasing property with the knowledge that circumstances exist that may justify the granting of a variance should not be regarded as a self-created hardship. Should not be regarded. So basically, it's saying this isn't their fault that the variance, that it doesn't meet the variance structure.
So what we're saying is that for this applicant, this is not a self-created hardship. Even though they knew when they bought the house that there was this zoning violation, they didn't create it. It was the previous owner that created it, not the current owner and the applicant that created the hardship.
So, but I guess with that, I think what would also be closed is, I guess there's accountability. If you know there's a zoning violation, you still purchase the property. That zoning violation doesn't then become applicable to you since you're now the property owner.
So to clarify, these variance standards are what the law requires. This is not just what's in the UDO. So that particular sentence at the end of the third requirement, the General Assembly has made a decision that a person who purchases a property knowing that there may be an issue that requires a variance does not now become they took the action. And so that is something that the General Assembly has decided. It's not a matter of there's no accountability. They're still having to go through the process and prove their case. It is just that the knowledge of there being an issue does not become them making an action to violate the zoning ordinance, if that makes sense. And I believe Solomon has some additional information for you.
Yeah, so what's happening through this issue's out there, and obviously the applicant, he's acknowledged and saying, the property owners are now acknowledged and saying, hey, I have to come and fix this. Because ultimately, I guess think of it as you, the board, can say no, and then the applicant then has to figure out how he's going to address this. Because again, this is sitting out here. So what's going to happen is in the future, if it gets sold, the property gets sold, this is going to be found again, and it's going to be another So it's kind of like so it's kind of like one of those things when applicants find this, we as staff will say, okay, hey, let's sit down, let's try to figure this out. And then ultimately it's also one of those, hey, for their own peace of mind, because like John says, because right now if it's built illegally, if it burns down, staff would then go and say, this wasn't permitted legally, you can't build it back. And so again, right now, obviously the applicant is now coming from the board asking, saying, hey, and that's true. Nicole has, Ms. Hewitt has acknowledged saying that, hey, what we were saying is, hey, the applicant did not create, because again, he or she did not pull those permits themselves.
They have to resolve the issue.
But they're gonna have to
Because
resolve
they
the
bought
issue
the
because
property.
again, at some point, when is John and I and our team, when the applicants come in, we try to work with it, because I guess at some point, if I wanted to, I could go and have code drop go out there and, hey, let's cite them and pull out my stick and start hitting people with the head. We don't want to do that. That's not a good, that's not a good policy for business when a property owner says, hey, there's this issue, but now we've got to figure out how the board fixes it and ultimately it's going in front of you guys asking for.
And if I may, the reason why this is not on the recommendation agenda is because when staff reviewed the request, we did not find that it meets all 4 of the conclusions of law that are stated. And when I go through the findings, I'll talk about basically what findings we did find in favor of the applicant and which ones we did not think that had been met. So when y'all are ready, I will proceed.
I think we're ready.
Okay. So unnecessary hardship does not result from the strict application of the ordinance because the garage and utility rooms could be detached and separated from the main home, resulting in a detached structure that would be compliant with the standards for detached accessory structures, which require a setback of 3 feet. The hardship does not result from conditions that are peculiar to the property. The shape and size of the subject property is consistent with other properties within the surrounding community, and other homes appear to have compliance with their required rear setback. The hardship does not result from actions that were taken by the applicant. The hardship does not result from actions that were taken by the applicant or the current property owner. They were a result of the actions taken by the previous owner, and the previous owner obtained 2 building permits, both which showed the 40-foot rear setback on the property. The requested variance is not consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance, and that public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved. The applicant has agreed that if the requested variance is granted, the requested variance would only apply to the encroaching garage and utility room and its replacement if damaged by or destroyed by an act of God. If the variance is granted, it would not substantially detract or alter from the central character of the neighborhood or adversely affect the adjacent properties. The encroachment condition existed since at least 2009, and the property to the rear home is on TOD/TR and developed with commercial shopping center uses as seen on the Google Street View imagery. There is an existing buffer and block wall and hedgerow between the shopping center and the homes along Milford Road.
I need to clarify that last variance factor, because it appears to what they're reporting that the justification was consistent. Or is that something intended for if the board grant the variance, they can use those facts to?
I think that was just a typo. The word "not" should be removed there. So it should say the requested variance is consistent with the spirit and purpose and intent of the ordinance. I think if based on how the rest of the findings are worded.
So for number 4, it should say the requested variance is consistent with the spirit, or is it not? What are you talking about?
Let me read it one more time. I think we were intending it to be variance is not consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance. But if it were granted, those would be the findings that the board could use. But we would say that they need to approve it with the condition that the applicant has offered or agreed to.
Are there any additional facts that would support the conclusion that is currently written?
I would point to the previous 20, number 20, that the other homes in the area appear to be compliant with the required rear setbacks
Okay.
and not peculiar to the property because other properties in the surrounding community are basically the same shape and size.
Thank you.
Has this property had an adverse effect on the community or has it been adversely commented on by citizens that live around this property?
So we did not have any, there's not any active notice of like complaints or anything like that, code enforcement complaints about the way the property is. So I'm not aware of anyone opposed to the requested variance. We have speakers here in favor that you'll hear from after our presentation.
So we're not, the only, I want to, when you were reading up there, our notes say the property to the rear of the home is zoned the TOD/TR and developed with commercial shopping center uses. As seen on Google Street imagery, there is and you said an existing buffer, but an existing, that word "an existing" is not in our finding of facts.
I added the word existing when I was talking. It's a buffer. There's a buffer there.
I mean, should we add?
You can if you want. I mean, I
that's
think
what you read. It just didn't, doesn't match what we have here in this paper.
I think the sentence works with either way, but if you think it makes more sense for clarity to say existing, we can add the word existing.
Okay. So it would read, the Google Street imagery, there is an existing buffer. Yeah, I like that better. Okay.
Number 26.
Yeah, it was number 26. It went, when he was reading, it's the last one on there. And if you'll see, it says there is a buffer. But what John said when he read it was there is an existing buffer. So if that's what he wants to say, then let's just put it in here, an existing buffer, that's all. I noticed as I was following along, he was adding words that I didn't see. Okay, all right. Anything else, John?
That's it. That concludes our presentation. And I think we do have a presentation that we'll pull up for the applicant.
Do we have any questions for John before he steps aside? All right. All right, we have the applicant. If you would step forward, please. Yes, anybody who's going to speak. Okay. You solemnly swear or affirm that the evidence you shall give to the board in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. All right, if you would each please say your name and spell it for the court reporter, please.
My name is Robert Swearingen.
Spell it.
His name is
Okay, thank you. All right. Thank you, sir. You may begin whenever you're ready.
You would just scroll that button down.
okay, and the pointer.
Yes, either one.
Either one.
Yes.
Oh, yes, you can sit up there or it's fine.
Hi, my name is Rob Swearingen. Thank you very much for your time today. I appreciate your volunteerism. Respect to your time. It's getting real late today. We'll keep this moving real fast. All Caroline and I hope to accomplish today is when we get ready to sell the property down the road, we don't want the next buyer to do a survey and have the same concern we did. And if the place burns down, we'd like to build it back the way it is today. We don't have any plans to change the footprint or any exterior modifications. We like it just the way it is. John went through this earlier. I color coded a little bit and showed our proximity. This is our lot here. Highway 77 is behind us, the Norfolk Southern Railroad, the light rail line, South Boulevard. We're sandwiched between Tyville and Woodlawn. There is a lot of intensive use behind us. And our property backs up to TOD. I've done a little bit of looking around on Polaris. It's kind of hard to find too many places where N1B touches TOD. Typically, you've got some multifamily or business use or commercial in there between. I think our lot is somewhat unique because of that proximity to the use. This kind of shows the house, the best aerial I've seen. This is the original house here, the original 1,100 square foot box. This addition was built, this addition was built, and then that's the attached garage. One thing I wanted to show on this that hadn't been presented before, that when the previous owner built those additions, the red line around the property, he built a 7-foot high block wall. It's block in portions, it's corrugated metal and others. So there's a pretty good screen around the whole property from all three sides. I've got some photos I'll share in a little bit to illustrate that. A little bit of history. The property was built in '57. The previous owner was Glenn Boudreaux. He purchased it in 2002. John shared the building permits that he pulled in 2006. There was 2 permits. One was to renovate the existing house. From what I understand from Glenn, on the photos of the time, it was pretty much a knockdown. It was in really bad shape. It had been foreclosed on twice. He was the second one to pick it up. Caroline and I went under contract on the property in late last year, and we did that property survey primarily because I was concerned that nice 7-foot high block wall was actually on the right property. If that was on the wrong property, we'd had another problem, and I wanted to make sure that was right. When we got the property done, that's when we discovered the setback issue. And I started talking with people like Kinley here, Dr. Don Mazzoni. I've been friends with Matt Doyle at Doyle & Alvis, our closing attorney for many years, and reviewed with him what risks did I have. Talked with our insurance agent at State Farm. And from everyone I heard, nobody cares. It's there, it's been there for quite a while. I felt I had 2 big concerns. One was if it burned down, I wouldn't be able to rebuild it the way it was. And 2, excuse me, if we sell the home, I don't want the next buyer to have the same concerns we did. So I'm not asking to make any modifications or do any improvements, or it's already done. I'm just asking for everyone to say that we recognize it's non-compliant and we're going to make it okay that way. We did close on the property in November. If those are my 2 biggest concerns, I figured we would go forward, and we initiated the variance process soon after the first year. I did the same aerial research that John did, and I do believe I confirmed from aerials that this attached garage was constructed somewhere in the 2016 timeframe. This is a survey that we had completed, and this kind of better shows the orange is the footprint of the 3-car garage. The green is the footprint of the current dwelling space, and the red line is the 35-foot setback. From what I understand, is if I were magically able to take that orange portion and just drag it about an inch over to the west, I would be in compliance. From the outside appearance of everyone around us, I don't think it would really look any different if we did that to bring it into compliance, but I'd sure prefer not to have to do that. I've showed addresses on the property. I'm going to show some photographs from each of those sides. If you see 5200 and 5214, we've got the owner of 5214 here with us today to speak in just a minute. Any questions? Sorry, that one's backwards, but that's the,
I think I stated earlier that it's 3 feet apart from the building, 3 feet within compliance.
3 inches.
Inches
An
apart
inch.
from the building,
It just has to be detached, is the way it's defined in the code. And it's attached when you have a connection that's more substantial than a breezeway.
And you put it 3 feet up on that.
Yeah, and so the 3 feet you heard was a setback required for the detached accessory structures is 3 feet from the property line.
I have a question for Solomon. The applicant mentioned he has a 7-foot tall block around the house. What's the height requirement for that? Is it
It's like
6 foot or
It's 8 in the rear yard. You have a maximum of 8.
in the rear?
this is a footprint of the home. I'm not sure why it's got flip-flop, but this shows here the parking wall between the house. He built a master bedroom, master bathroom suite, and added this garage. It is an attached wall. Currently, there is no to the garage. You gotta go outside and come in through the motorized garage doors to get into the garage. The permits he's already gone through. This one was for the residents to do the renovation. This one was for the addition that he shared earlier. One thing that gave me confidence that we shouldn't have a concern is when we went to the county website, they have the house shown as it's currently built. So I'm not sure how, without the building permit, that garage and shop got shown on there the way it is, but it appears the county has been taxing and assessing the house properly per the square footage and the improvements. I can't explain how it got built and on the Polaris website, not recognized through building permits. Some photographs. It is heavily landscaped in front, so it is hard to see the house, but from the front, it looks essentially the same as every other house on the street, a little more color. These are houses. These are photos from inside the house. The back, the 7'9" separation we currently have the back of the garage to the property line in the wall. This is a courtyard that's in the middle and a 3-car garage. More pictures. From 5200 Milford, the house on the corner. If you look toward our house, it's heavily landscaped. You get right up near the wall, you can see the elevation of the garage. But again, if you could imagine, if I were to bring it in compliance by pushing it 6 inches west, I don't think it would look any different. These are photos from the Rogers home next door on the other side. That's the wall. The garage, I think, starts somewhere around here. I believe all this is house and garage is on this end. The shopping center behind. This is a better picture of that alley. This is looking due east down Seneca. This is that shopping center, and all the shopping centers have access for trucks to bring in materials. That happens behind our home. Similar pictures from the alley to looking directly at our house and the block wall. The 4 questions that I guess I don't know what happens here today. The unnecessary hardship would result from strict application. From what I understand, when I went under contract on this house and was doing due diligence, I believe my worst case scenario was the next buyer was going to be concerned. I'm hearing today that possibly enforcement is still a possibility. That scares me. I would sure like to make that go away, so I do believe it's unnecessary hardship. I would have to make some substantial modifications to that garage. Hardship results from conditions that are peculiar to the property. I believe is relatively unique that N1B is bumped up against TOD, that high intensity of use. And it's certainly completely unique that somehow this got built without going through the proper process and built in not compliance with zoning. No other homes have that condition. Hardship did not result from actions taken by the applicant. Clearly, it was done years before I knew the property even existed. And the requested variance is consistent with the spirit and purpose. The harm to Caroline and I, if this isn't granted, is, I believe, pretty substantial. And the harm to the public, if this is, they've been living with for quite some time. I'm hoping we can find a way to get this done. Thank you. Any questions?
I think that was a great question because you left me where I had questions and read laws. I'm gonna come back. I'm just kind of poke around it because to everything Swindon just stated, that was kind of where my place was in the law. I didn't fully understand. Again, looking at the hardship does not result from actions taken by the applicant or the owner. So we're saying that this is the fault of the property owner, but we're going to penalize them for it, if I'm reading that correctly. The requested variance is not consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of zoning ordinance, and that the public safety is potentially. I'm curious to know where is public safety a question improvement experience. So just poking around and give us clarity on that.
So before John answers, I just want to remind you guys of the standard here. It is on the applicant to prove that all of the variance factors are met. It is not on the city to prove they are not met.
I guess I feel like they're being met. I just want to kind of ask a question.
So from staff's perspective, the hardship resulting from the strict application of the ordinance, there is a way. Now we understand that it would cost money and be, potentially, have to get plans, architect to draw up plans, and they'd have to spend the money to hire a contractor. But there is a way to create it into a detached structure that would then be compliant. So, yeah. So I mean, it depends on who you ask, right? From a staff perspective, there's a way to meet the code, just like any other project that we were talking about earlier. If you have steep topography, you can build things to address topography. But is it a hardship, an unnecessary hardship? That's what you're looking for that criteria.
And Gary, to help you with that our board, the applicant may consider it a hardship, but we may not consider monetary cost when we decide whether it's a hardship or not.
I'm not thinking about money in any way.
Well, but he is. He's saying
yeah.
it's a hardship because if he has to go through and take that center wall out or put that 7 inches in there, what I'm saying to you is be careful because we can't. That's not something that we can base our decision on whether it's going to cost the applicant some money.
But his question was about the fourth standard.
Well,
Yeah. His question was about the fourth standard, spirit, purpose, and intent of the regulation. We had a little discussion about that during the presentation because there were a few of the things listed that didn't necessarily mention that it was not meeting that threshold, but staff brought up that number 20 other homes in the area did not appear compliant with the required rear setback was the one that they felt like was the finding of fact that did not meet that number
Right,
4
yeah.
threshold.
If you're talking about consistency with the ordinance standards and the spirit and purpose and intent of the ordinance, the intent of the ordinance is for the structures to have a setback from the property line. In this case, the ordinance requires a 35-foot rear setback and the structure is 7.9 feet. So that would be inconsistent with the spirit and purpose and intent of the ordinance, and compared to the other homes in the neighborhood that all appear to be compliant. Some of those do have detached structures that are closer to the property line, but they are detached. So the fact that this is an attached structure is what makes it not consistent with the spirit and purpose and intent of the ordinance.
And I don't think anybody's made any comment on safety. So that's just that's out there.
Yeah. Have you had this discussion with the title company?
I did. insurance. I had the discussion with the closing attorney, Matt Doyle, who works with title insurance. At the time I discussed with him, I had emails back and forth from planning telling me that my biggest risk was the next person that gets ready to buy it, and if it burns down. And title insurance didn't have any issues with either of those concerns.
So you
were the
had,
next person buying the house. And that conversation was before you closed. You were the next person buying the house.
Correct.
You've got title insurance, so you're in the clear here.
Correct.
So it's up to them to help you fix it. So there's no issue of money.
I don't see it as a title issue. The deed is clean. There's no encumbrances or
The title issue. I believe it's a title. Well, your lawyer would know better than me, but that's just trying to help.
I guess the way I looked at this in the discussions that I had with staff was that substantial justice is what's the consequence to me and us? What's the consequence to the public? That garage has been sitting there for 9 years, exactly like it is. I don't think there's any complaints. I'm going to introduce you to the neighbor here that sees it more frequently. The consequence to me, if I have to bring it into compliance, is pretty substantial. So that's the way I read number 4, and that's how I got to the point where I felt like I could be successful here today.
Any other questions or comments from Mr. Sweargan?
number 2, the hardship does not result from conditions that are peculiar to the property, location, size, topography. And I understand we can't use precedent when we're looking at these cases, but understanding the UDO, there is a different understanding of N1s and N2B zoning when it's against a different type of zone, i.e. if the highway is right there behind the property, or if a TOD is right there against the property, we look at it slightly different when we're looking at these variances. And so I'm curious to know on that, when the hardship does not result from conditions that are peculiar to the property, that 7-foot setback, I mean, they have a TOD right there against the property. That is peculiar to the location of it.
There are places where the butt shopping center, zone, the shopping, partially from the shopping center. So we didn't, staff did not feel like it that necessarily made it unique and to warrant the justification of that conclusion.
And I would also point you to the variance factor in and of itself explicitly states that hardships resulting from conditions that are common to the neighborhood or the general public may not be the basis for granting a variance. So you should look at, you've received multiple pictures of the neighborhood showing the property potentially backing up, other properties potentially backing up to that. So you should consider whether that is something that is common to the neighborhood or common to that area as a whole.
And the way I read that, the condition, the unique conditions of the property, the unique condition of the property is the garage is there. I mean, you may look at that as the condition of the property is the lot or the configuration, the topography, but this got built, somehow it got by everybody and it's there. That's what's peculiar about it. The precedent is it exists. Nobody else has it.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Sweargan. Ms. Noble, do you have comments that you would like to make?
I'm eager for you to hear from our neighbor, who is the person who's been the most impacted by the structure. She's the one who sees it daily. So,
okay.
And
all right. Mr. Rogers, would you like to make a comment?
I'm the next door neighbor on the other side of that long wall. It's a lovely house and one of the garage that I have with the setback.
Any other comments from our speakers?
No.
All right, thank you very much. Any other questions for staff before we go to deliberations? All right, I will entertain comments.
I feel like Gary kind of hit on the key aspect of the thresholds. I feel like the peculiarity of the property is probably the one hardship that we need to, that I feel like is a little bit of a stretch. But the applicant has presented location as the reasoning. That would be the reasoning that I think that we could consider. So, for instance, for 18, the hardship, the first hardship of unnecessary hardship resulting from strict application of the regulation. I don't think that. I think that we as a board, a board could decide differently than staff and easily say that the applicant would have a hardship with the strict application of the ordinance. Number 19, that's the peculiarity of the property. Number 20 would have to be stricken if we were to consider this as being consistent with the purpose, spirit, purpose, and intent of the regulation, because staff has specifically said that they think that 20 illustrates that it is not consistent. 21.
I mean, that could be left. The hardship does not result from actions.
Correct. 21 could be left. 22 could be left.
I'm not involved with 21.
Why?
Because they did it when they closed.
But
it wasn't any actions. But it wasn't any actions that they did. Besides, like you said, closing the house, but the actual actions of putting the structure there wasn't on them.
The act of purchasing a property with the knowledge that the circumstances exist that may justify the granting of a variance shall not be regarded as self-created hardship.
Right. Shall not.
So we're good there.
We're good.
And then it seems antithetical, but that's the law. And so when you go back to 23, the requested variance, I think that there were some statements within staff's presentation, such as the fact that it cannot be noticeable from the street, could allow us to reconsider 23 as being consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent. So really, I think it kind of hinges on this location question.
Really briefly, would the board be able to elaborate if what would be the unnecessary hardship under the first standard? What would be the facts supporting that conclusion?
The unnecessary hardship being that the hardship is that they would have to do significant, they would have to expend significant funds and effort to reorient their structure. And based on the layout of the structure, there's no benefit to doing that. They cannot access it they couldn't access it prior from the house. So they would not be gaining or losing anything from the dislocation of the structure from the main structure. It's not there's no communicating hallway between the two structures. So by separating it, they're not altering the use of it. It's unnecessary to make them do that. They're already limited in how they're able to use it.
I believe my counterpart is being politically correct. In other words, he's saying it's a lot of mess for nothing. That's what he's trying to say. It seems to be a lot of mess for nothing. To go through this process, detach the structure from the house in accordance. I see because of the UDO, but I mean, practically where the house is, what's going on with the property, the impacts and effects it has on the community and those around it is marginal. It's minimum, if any. And so to create a hardship to make them, and it isn't even about money. It becomes an emotional, distressing situation to create a hardship to make somebody remove something that they didn't put there. And go through that it's like you said, everything you said from a politically correct nature. But yeah, we're at the point where non-politically aside, it's just a lot of mess for nothing. But from a UDO standpoint, well, I guess I don't know if staff can chime in, but I agree with everything my counterpart just alluded to.
I think a couple of things for the board to remember is that, again, as has been previously stated, cost alone cannot be the basis for you to grant a variance. And ultimately, this board is seeking compliance, but unless an applicant can prove all of the factors of the variance. And my concern is with ensuring that your decision withholds legal scrutiny, whatever you choose. So that is why I'm asking, as we are moving forward with this process, if a majority of you is leaning towards granting a variance, it would be preferable if it is clear what are the facts that support your findings. So that is what I'm asking you all to provide.
Well, we can, I mean, but that's within our purview to do that. If we can, if we all come to a consensus about what it is we are basing that change on.
Hamilton, I think we should do a straw vote just kind of
Okay.
in a second, but Hamilton, I think your point about the cost and all this stuff, starting with number one, I think our argument would be, we support the variance. Our argument should be not giving the variance would maybe result in the fact the house would be unsellable or unbuildable if it would burn to the ground. Those are the things that John said early on. And if we stuck to that argument, I think that'd be better than saying the cost issue. It's not, that's not our issue. But I think saying that we not getting a variance makes the house unsellable, I think that becomes a legal basis.
As long as there is evidence to that fact, I can't recall specifically what the testimony from staff was as to whether or not the house would be sellable. If I remember correctly, it was a concern that there may be an issue with selling the house in the future, not a full conclusion that it would be unsellable. However, the board can reopen to ask for clarification on that point so that if that is part of your findings of fact, it is accurate and consistent with the evidence.
Attorney, you would think, closing attorney, my experience, closing attorney is going to say, this is not, you're not going to be able to get title insurance, and you are dead. Don't buy the house. That's my experience many times that's happened. So I'm a little bit confused about.
So I guess a couple of things to clarify. First of all, unfortunately, I'm not a title insurance attorney, so I would not be able to provide you with any information as to that particular. But the other part of it is, as the reason I am recommending that you might reopen the hearing is, your intended finding of fact is that to not grant a variance would render the house unsellable because of title issues. That has to be based on evidence, clear evidence that you heard at the hearing, not based on a belief or prior experience that is not presented by the applicant or staff. As such, my recollection of staff's presentation was that a potential concern would be issues with title moving forward, as well as a potential concern that was more concrete would be that if the house, there would be a storm, a fire, etc., they would not be able to rebuild the garage as it was, that they would have had to build a new structure in compliance. If it is clear, if your recollection as a board is that, for example, the conclusion is that the house would be unsellable in the future, and that is consistent with the evidence, that is for you to find. However, again, in my recollection of the evidence, I wasn't sure that staff clearly stated that that is for certain unsellable.
Having not with industry and like I said, you're not in that realm. If he's a subject matter expert or is, would that, what he just stated, have a different varying weight?
Can you please restate your question?
If he knows what he's talking about and is a subject matter expert, what he stated, would that then be pertinent to the record? Because you're currently saying what he just said is irrelevant because it wasn't presented in evidence. But if he's a subject matter expert and has knowledge on this particular matter, then would it be relevant?
Who is he in this question?
Bill Shea.
Board member Shea is acting in his capacity as a board member. If he wanted to act in a capacity as an expert witness for the applicant, he would have had to recuse himself from the case in order to provide evidence. In other words, you can't both provide evidence and on one side or the other, as well as sit and make the determination.
So in other words, you can't be knowledgeable about it and an expert on the matter and provide your expertise and also be on the board.
That is not what I've stated. What I've
Okay, now
stated
that's
is,
what I
is
was trying
that
to ask.
you cannot both provide evidence as a witness as well as sit on the board and make a determination. That would be a conflict of interest for the board member.
I don't believe he did that. I think he did that as a board member, that evidence.
I would make a motion to approve the variance based on the conclusion of law number 1, a necessary hardship would result from the strict application of the ordinance because they would have to make significant alteration to the structure. Not about the cost, it's about making significant modification to the structure. Number 2, the hardship does result from the condition that's peculiar to the property. And number 3, the hardship does not result from actions taken by the applicant because it was done prior. And the General Assembly already agreed that the things done before they took ownership does not constitute action taken as if they did it. Number 4, the requested variance is consistent with spirit, purpose, and intent of the zoning ordinance as evidenced by Ms. Rogers. The public safety isn't in any way diminished or harmed, and we appreciate the property as well. Therefore, I'm making a motion to approve.
I second.
Okay, all right, we have a motion by Ms. Sun to approve, a second by Mr. Young. All right, Mr. Court,
Court, yes.
Sun,
Sun, yes.
Mr. Shea,
Shay, no.
Mr. Young,
Young, yes.
Dryden, yes. All right, but now we've got some editing to do because this unnecessary hardship would not result from the strict application of the ordinance is the one we're going to have the most issue with. Because
I believe board member Sun provided a reason when she made her motion, and if it's okay, I'd like to work with you to
Okay.
sort of provide those and
Okay,
give you some proposed edits, and maybe you can consider those as you go.
thank you.
So on number 18, you would be saying that the hardship does result, so eliminate the word not, from strict application of the ordinance. Because the garage and utility room would require significant modification otherwise.
Yes.
Yes.
And eliminate the rest.
Correct.
Yes.
So it would read, the hardship does result from strict application of the ordinance because the garage and utility room would require significant
Modification
modification.
otherwise. I believe that is consistent with the motion Ms. Sun made.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay.
On 19,
19, we just,
I believe Ms. Sun stated in her motion that the hardship does result from conditions that are peculiar to the property. And Ms. Sun, could you please restate what the reasoning was?
Was because it's abutting a TOD.
That's what I was gonna say, because the hardship does not result from conditions that are peculiar to the property because.
Because the subject property abuts to a. Is the.
Okay. So that's number
The
8.
subject property abuts to a TOD zoned property.
Yeah. We eliminate number 20. Number 21, the hardship does not result, we leave that. Number 22, we can leave that. It will have to be renumbered because we
Yeah, it
eliminated
can
20.
be, staff can follow up on
And
that.
the requested variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance in that, what was the thing?
No public safety was harmed.
In that, no public safety. Was harmed. Is that okay, Ms. Hewitt was harmed?
Can you repeat that? So
She's saying the
23?
requested variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance in that no public safety, she said, was harmed, but
Was
I don't know how.
diminished or
Public safety is not harmed.
is not harmed.
So maybe adding a additional finding of fact and stating that, so leaving this as is, the requested variance is consistent with spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance in that public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved.
Okay,
And a new finding would state,
That there's no evidence of it. Public safety.
I believe you mentioned based on the evidence of the neighbor.
Yeah, neighbor.
Based on the testimony of the neighbor.
okay. So what, so it would say that this would start with no, or the,
So a new finding could potentially read, based on the testimony of adjacent neighbor.
okay,
You stated public safety is
Is
harmed.
harmed.
so based on testimony of adjacent neighbor, no public safety. How about issues exist?
If the board prefers that language.
Yeah, that works better.
Chairperson Dryden, can you reread that in its
Okay,
entirety, just so that I have
based
it?
on testimony, on the, I guess you should put the word of, based on the testimony of an adjacent neighbor, no public safety issues exist.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, the adjacent neighbor. Okay. Okay. And then we leave there at 24, that because the applicant has agreed that if the requested variance is granted, would only apply to the encroaching garage and utility room and replacement if damaged or destroyed by an act of God.
So your motion to approve the variance did not include a condition. In order to go back and add a condition, you would have to undo your approval and redo the motion with the condition.
Okay, well, I think as a board, we need to do that. Are you agreed? We
I
need to
agree.
do that condition? Mr. Court?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so,
So let me walk you through what that looks like. Somebody needs to make a motion to rescind an action that was previously approved.
okay, I make a motion to rescind.
Chairperson Dryden, another board member.
another-
I make a motion to rescind our previous motion for approval.
And I second.
Okay, motion to rescind.
And then you would need to vote.
Okay, right.
I make a motion to approve with.
Oh, you would
All in
need,
favor of
you need to
rescinding.
vote
all
in
in
this
favor of that.
motion.
Young, yes.
Mr. Young made a motion to rescind the previous,
Previously approved action.
rescind. I'm sorry, I have to write this all down because I'm going to want to find the minutes. Previously approved, what did you say, the
Action.
And Mr. Court second. Okay. All right. Now, Ms. Lynn, would you like to amend your motion,
You need to vote on the motion. You haven't voted on the
Oh,
motion
vote on
yet.
the motion. Okay, Mr. Court?
Court, yes.
Okay, Ms. Sun?
Sun, yes.
Mr. Shea?
Say yes.
Mr. Young?
Young, yes.
Dryden, yes. So we have the motion to rescind has been approved. All right, Ms. Sun, would you like to amend your motion, make a new motion with the number 24 added that there is the request?
Yes, make a motion.
Okay, is that okay? We make a motion to approve this variance with,
Conditions
The
as stated
condition
in
that-
24.
yeah, of number 24, that only the garage and utility room can be replaced if it's damaged by or destroyed by an act of God.
And number 25, correct?
25 is just a finding of fact. And that would be something we'll just go back and make sure that it's clear once we're reviewing the findings of fact again.
Okay? All right, and Ms. Sun has made that revised motion. Do I hear a second?
Young seconds.
Okay. All right, so Ms. Sun, Mr. Court,
Court, yes.
Mr. Shea,
No.
Mr. Young.
Young, yes.
Ms. Dryden, yes. Okay. So now the variance has been approved with a condition. Now we have to look at conclusions of law and finding the facts. And I think we made some,
So going back to 24,
okay,
you could just say the applicant has agreed to the following condition.
okay, applicant has agreed to the following conditions, okay?
And then it would just read, the requested variance would only apply.
This variance would only apply to the encouraged, okay, that's the condition. All right, good. And number 25,
The variance will not.
choices, if the variance is granted, which we're doing, it will not substantially detract or alter that one should get, okay.
Do we need to change the if?
Or do we need to take it out altogether?
So the changes I would recommend is deleting if at the beginning of the sentence, and then the words is granted and it. And so the new sentence would read, the variance will not substantially detract from or alter the essential character of the neighborhood, and the
Okay.
rest of the sentence.
So it reads, the variance will not substantially detract. Okay, I like that. And I think number 26 is okay. Yeah, and
Yes.
we're gonna add, there is an existing buffer with a block wall and hedge row between the shopping center and the homes along Milford Road.
And then as far as the conclusions of law, under number 1, remove not.
Correct.
Under number 2, also remove not.
Correct.
Number 3 stays as is.
Right.
And number 4, remove the word not.
Correct. All right, with those corrections noted, do I hear a motion to approve the finding of facts and conclusions of law?
So motion.
Ms. Lund? And do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Court. Okay, Mr. Young,
Young, yes.
Mr. Shea,
Say no.
Ms. Sun,
Yes.
Mr. Court,
Court, yes.
Dryden, yes. Okay, so the variance is approved with conditions. All right. Thank you very much.
And now you have the minutes.
Yes, we have the minutes. So if you'll take a look at the minutes, please, from the last meeting. I did not see any problems with that. All right, do I hear a motion to approve the minutes from the February meeting?
Court move to approve.
Sounds
Thank
like
you.
good.
All right. Mr. Court made it first and Ms. Sun second. All right, Mr. Young,
Young, yes.
Mr. Shea,
Say yes.
Ms. Sun,
Then yes.
and Ms.
Court, yes.
Okay, and now I would remind the board, again, we chatted just a minute ago, on April the 14th, they are doing a UDO training that we do every year from the,
Chairperson, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I'm not sure you voted on the approval of the minutes, or did you?
She did not.
oh, I did not, I'm sorry. I was in a hurry. All right. So,
You're the last one to vote.
okay, yes, I vote to approve the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
I should have, yes.
Should have hit me.
Give my chance.
You had your one chance and you blew it. Okay, just to remind you that they have scheduled our training for April the 14th. It's in the afternoon from 1 to 4. You need to let Commissioner know if you're going to be able to attend that training. If not, you'll have to do it another time. It's one of the requirements to be on this board because we are quasi judicial. So you did get an email about it, or I did, I know. So you should have, if you didn't, just let Commissioner know. I will be there. I think
That
Mr.
train is annual?
Mr. Court said he had a conflict.
Okay. That's what I was wondering. Is that?
Oh, he's already done because he just came on the board. Oh, okay, that's cool. So just to let them know. All right, this concludes the UDO Board of Adjustment for March. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thanks for cleaning me up.
Quiet, but